allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. In accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over Lunenburg Public Access. We'll take roll call. We are all present. Is there any public comment from the board?
I'll save my comments for later.
Okay, is there any public comment from the public? No? All right. Our first appointment is for an A&R plan for 961 and 994 Northfield Road.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Neil Gorman from David E. Ross Associates Incorporated, representing the owners of 961 Northfield Road, John E. Saliba and David G. Saliba. And before you tonight, we're presenting a A&R plan on the south side of Northfield Road that abuts the Settlers Crossing golf course. The plan is showing the creation of two new lots, Lot 1 and Lot 2. Lot 1 has 250 feet of frontage, 51,359 square feet of land area with no wetlands. Lot 2 has 175 feet of frontage, 92,461 square feet with 87,909 square feet of upland. In addition to the plan, in addition to the creation of the two new lots, we're also showing a parcel swap between the golf course, which is 994 Northfield Road, LLC, and the Salibas at 961 Northfield Road. During our survey work, it was discovered that the property line between the two parcels, or the two properties, ran directly down one of the holes of the golf course, which is this property line right here. I believe it's the 9th hole in the golf course. So there was right down the middle of the fairway. The parties got together and we coordinated a parcel swap to help correct that encroachment. So the golf course will be completely on the land for 994 Northfield Road, LLC. So parcel A, which is 2.48 acres, is being conveyed from the Salibas to 994 Northfield Road. And parcel B, which is 2.98 acres, is being conveyed from the golf course, or 994 Northfield Road, to the Salibas. So we're accomplishing two things here on this particular project. And in the end, Lot 3 of the remaining land of 55.76 acres and the 2.98 acres gives us a total land area of 56.26 6 acres remaining for Lot 3. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board.
I'll open it up to questions from the board. Excuse me.
Yes, so just so we're clear, Lot 1 and Lot 2 are under the ownership of 994 or the Salibas?
The Salibas.
Okay, so they're creating those two lots.
Correct.
Is the golf course's existing driveway and clubhouse and stuff?
Clubhouse is right across the street here.
Okay.
And just the golf holes, half of the golf course is on the south side of Northfield Road.
Okay.
So yeah, the clubhouse and the parking lot are right above where the north arrow is right here.
So was this lot part of the old Highfield Village? Okay.
The entry road passed through that lot.
like over here somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the opposite side of the wetlands over this way, I believe. And we had done extensive soil testing out there with Jim Griffey from the Board of Health and have submitted sewage disposal system designs which he has reviewed, and we just have a couple corrections, but he is okay with the designs.
Any
This
other
is-
questions from the board?
This is residentially zoned land, correct?
So
Say.
leave it land, yes.
So the intention is to be able to, I'm assuming, build houses there?
Correct.
Yeah.
Good.
All right. Does anybody have any more questions or comments?
No.
Is there any questions from the public regarding this?
Not a question, but comment. Hi, my name is Bill Gus.
If you wouldn't mind coming up to the microphone, identifying yourself, please, for the people at home.
My name is Bill Gustus, and I'm one of the owners of the golf course. And we support this application for the division into 2 lots. I've had extensive conversations with the owners of that land. And we've worked out a way to put that side of the 9th fairway back under the ownership of the golf course in return for a piece of land that we would never be able to use. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question, and it's short, and it's to Adam, actually. Is this gonna, this is not gonna open up the Lot 3 to a limited project because of that wetland finger? They still have room to get around it?
I don't know that it would matter because it's not a full crossing, and they would have the opportunity to fill and replicate. It's a fairly large parcel, and the system doesn't cover the entire frontage. So if they were to decide to come in through that wetland area, they're not bifurcating an existing wetland. They're filling the edge of even if it's a BVW, they're filling the edge of it and replicating elsewhere on site.
I get you, but my question was limited project. That's not gonna let them qualify as a limited project
You know
status.
what, I'm not going to comment on that. It's outside of what I can
Okay.
say, and that wouldn't necessarily be within the scope of
The A&R,
A&R.
I understand.
Any other questions or comments?
No, sir.
No.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the A&R.
Don't need it.
Pardon me? Oh, we don't need a motion, please, do we? Okay. I guess we will not oppose it.
I think we just approve it and sign it.
I shall endorse.
That coming down?
Calm down. You're the next contestant.
It's the 28th.
Yes, potato is.
There you go, Matthew, okay. Our next appointment is a request for waiver from Walker Orthodontics at 119 Massachusetts Avenue.
See that, but I see,
Mr. Chairman? If I could just request that when we're doing an A&R and then we're jumping right into more business, can we just wait until the A&R is signed before we get started? I miss a lot of information, people's names and where they're from and everything at the beginning of
Sure,
meetings. Thank you.
that's fine. Maybe we could allow them to set up before taking
Oh, yeah.
testimony. How's that? Compromise. If there's no one here for Waco Orthodontics, we can put that off and go into 84 Lakefront Ave. It's another request for a waiver for public hearing.
Who does this go to?
Thank you. Thanks, you too.
Matthew just walked in.
Yes, thank you. Nope, I'll sit down. Thank you. Thank you for waiting.
Certainly.
Oh, yeah.
Are we ready? Please proceed.
Yeah, my name's Ken Ricker, owner of Embers Pizza at 84 Lakefront Ave in Lunenburg. I'm here for you tonight to see if I can get a waiver to put my patio in on the side of the building.
Can you give us a brief description of the size of the?
Yeah, everything's in there. It's pretty much 16 by 23 and a half, and it's on my existing property that I have now. I had an engineer come in and ping it, and also give you a copy of the plan. And not really doing too much. We gotta dig out a little bit and just pour some concrete. Probably be done in a few days. Pretty small job.
Are you going to continue the fence in the front, like along the?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm sorry, yeah. I'm thinking, I haven't gone in front of you yet.
What is the nature of
All
the
right,
waiver?
so we can have people drinking.
What's the nature of the waiver?
They're looking for a waiver from
Site plan.
the site plan, from all the rules and regulations. Where they're altering an already paved area to a different slope, but equally sized paved area for seasonal dining.
How many more seats are you expecting?
Roughly 16 to 20.
Okay, and do you have a seating capacity already?
I do. I'm at 93, and currently I'm at 62, so we'll be still within the means.
So I swung by, it's going to look, basically what you're saying, it's going to look the same, it's just going to be larger.
Yeah, it's just going to be a little larger. It's going to be a little to the right, excuse me. Continue to be fenced in. Nothing really much different at all.
How long have you been located where you're at?
3 years. It was 3 years, June 25th.
And I'm assuming that the developments are good for business for you in that area?
Great for business, yeah. Yeah, we've seen a lot of foot traffic, which is really nice. We do have plenty of parking. These are the parking situation down there anyway, but 3 years we've been there, we haven't had any noise complaints or anything like that. It's kind of early, shuts down around 10, so we're not really looking, we're just looking to be the restaurant that we've developed and maintain the business the way it is.
And the majority of your customers, would you say that they're from Lunenburg?
I'd say it's a really good mix. It seems as though I get a lot from the Pepperell area too, as equally as from Leominster.
Okay, that's
Soulsworth,
great.
a lot of Fitchburg, kind of surrounding communities. I do see the same people, pretty regularly, but I'd say it's really a surrounding area.
It's good.
Yeah, it is. It's been really well received.
Currently, that's like just a driveway, right, that goes up behind that area?
It's just a driveway that goes up a little further than the building.
Yeah.
It used to be a big apartment house. They sold it to Whalum, and they took that down. They just never took the driveway out. So we'll be digging that out, and like I said, it's a relatively small job. It's just a matter of the proper channels. Hopefully, if I'm granted, I'll have it up and running by next weekend after. Try to enjoy the last of the season that we have.
When did you
Fall's really nice.
Yeah, it is, actually.
When did you start? I understand that you this has been a process for you. When did you start the process?
I think April.
April?
Yeah, it's been a long process. I did it early so I could be open for the summer.
Yeah.
When I did it originally, it seemed as though it was going to be really a simple alteration, and the way I was instructed was just come out, do it, run it by the building inspector, and start the process. But then I've been in front of numerous boards now to do it, which it is what it is, I'm ready now, so as long as you guys are okay with it and ready, I expect that, like I said, hopefully a week or two will be open.
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any issues with the waiver. When I did inspect the site, I did the no parking spaces. How many of the parking spaces in front of the building are yours?
I guess technically, the 5 that are there, that'll stay there, we're not taking away any parking. So
It's not really pre-allocated, it's public parking
Exactly.
along the side of the waterfront, and there's close to 100 parking spots there that
Right.
are shared between the businesses that are there.
Mhm.
So parking is definitely not an issue for any of those businesses down there.
No, I'm not saying they don't have adequate parking, and I guess my concern is that we probably shouldn't be encouraging the practice of asking people not to park in designated parking areas. I understand why you do it, because they're right there by the patio, and you probably want people to see the lake.
Oh,
and things of that
I only
nature.
do that for the view of the lake.
Right.
It's only 2 spots.
Right,
And,
out of the 6 that you have.
Yeah, it's
So-
only 2 that I do it, and I only do it for the summer months, so a van doesn't back into the patio, and when they start it, blow exhaust on all the people eating. That's the only reason why I do it.
Right, is that,
If I'm not mistaken.
again, I understand why you're doing it, but I just think it's a practice overall that if
Well-
you do it, then other people will start doing it, and then it may cause a problem with,
I'm not really sure,
People who-
they're mine, so I think I can do that.
Actually, they're not. Your building shows a 0 lot line in the front, so they're public parking, and if there's an issue with the way public parking is addressed, that's, I believe, either through the PD or through the Board of Selectmen. I'd have to look and get you an answer on that.
personally, I'd like to see it addressed, just because, again, it's nothing against you, it's just the practice.
Why don't I
think
just
we
make
should
them both
encourage.
handicap parking spots? I'll put 2 handicap parking spots there.
Again, as Adam said, I don't believe you can because that's not your property.
Yeah, it's public.
It's public.
So, I mean, I don't have a problem with the discouraging of it, but technically, if someone wants to park there, you can't stop them.
And I guess what I would say is you can, as the adjoining business owner would have the right to petition, I believe it would be the Board of Selectmen as road commissioners and controlling interest of the road to eliminate, alter the status of, or something along those lines. So if that's something that you think you'd like to continue over time, it may be worth your investment to write them a letter and just have a conversation with them about
100%.
if you'd like something done with that.
Absolutely. I wouldn't want it to hinder
Yeah.
the decision tonight.
No,
No, not at all.
I don't
problem with it, I'll just
Probably
take the
would
signs
make the
down, yeah.
recommendation that
Yeah.
you do that. And when I did view it, I didn't realize those weren't yours, because you do have hashing in some areas, so you probably could have the room for the 6 spots, and then, but if it's not your property, then you can't really rehash it so that you can't sit there. And then the other thing is I spoke with the wetlands agent today, and he seemed to be under the impression you need to file for a RDA because you're within 100 feet of the lake. So you may want to look into that before you start. But
Yeah, I'll look into it.
That's up to you, and proceed at your own risk, I would say. Any other questions or comments?
Well, it seems like the only minimum required offset in the commercial district is for buildings.
Correct.
So there's no requirement for the side lot line and the front lot line?
Correct.
For, okay.
I think I understand why you have those lots, even though it may not be allowed. I understand why, that's something that you're doing, because I think for customers, it's a really nice view where you're located at, and it makes perfect sense, to come out, kind of sit by the lake, have a nice, some food and drink. But perhaps, there's more process, unfortunately, that you have to go through or should follow through with to see if there's something that you can do to perhaps get those spots maybe taken away from being parking spots.
Absolutely.
If it becomes, an issue.
Do you own any property on the other side of the Lakefront Ave?
I own the property next door to it, on the rocks, the sports bar.
So, I mean, you'd have nothing on the lakefront itself?
There is
Right along the lake.
The dock, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, the dock.
The dock is yours.
Just deeded to me, yeah.
Cool.
Do we have the ability to seek the opinion of the Board of Selectmen on the no parking? And still grant the waiver?
It's a completely separate issue. That's management of public resources as opposed to the approval of a proposed project on private property.
If it
I mean-
was
So
done,
if you have concerns about the way that the public resources are being allocated or used, that's sort of above and beyond what's happening on his private property.
Yeah, he doesn't own it, so it's really a moot point to ask him to do one thing or
You can't tie the
another.
use of that public property to this permit.
okay, if he did own it, would that be allowed?
Well, you would have,
Even though he
it'd be a very different conversation if it was on his
Why?
property, because it would be part of his site plan. His site plan ends at the building front and the patio.
So he basically has no required parking?
There is no parking, he has no on-site parking.
Okay.
But this business was opened and approved, obviously, with the understanding that the 100 or so public parking spaces were adequate to serve that area. As if I'm not mistaken, this, the other property Mr. Ricker owns, as well as the third establishment down the way, were all historically placed there with the use of public parking or for the service of foot traffic clients.
Okay. Well, my objections have been noted for the record, so I think that's adequate for me. If somebody sees it and has an issue, they can,
I move that we grant the waivers as presented.
Second.
any discussion?
Do we think it's prudent to do that before we hear from Concom and Selectmen and anybody else that we've just mentioned? DPW, road commissioners?
Well, as those spaces are public realm, the best-case scenario for Mr. Ricker is they eliminate them. The worst-case scenario is they come out and they shake their finger at him and say, stop putting no parking signs out, and life moves on, and maybe one day a van parks in front of his restaurant and some of his guests are aggrieved. And as far as Concom, I don't think that they're going to be altering. It's an already disturbed area, and he's probably actually making it more pervious than it currently is, because I assume from the look on the plan and what's out there, it's a semi-pervious pavement in a block form. So, you know, it's as impermeable as what's out there, if not slightly more so.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I brought it up is because in the application, it refers to drainage as well, just impervious surface, but...
But I don't think there's any increase in impervious surface, would be my...
Right.
If the Concom were reviewing it, they'd be reviewing it for mitigation measures to prevent introduction of sediment or other material into a resource area, which would be handled simply through hay bale or silt fence staking. Or, you know, some other manner of keeping it on site. Whether the board wishes to hold for their comment would be up to the board. It seems like there's a motion and a second, so I guess this is discussion on that motion.
I don't feel the need to hold for their comment. I'm confident they're aware of the situation, and they'll deal with it if they feel it's necessary, so... But that's just me, so...
I agree with you.
I agree.
I concur. I don't think there's any reason to hold this up.
Okay. So, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? I will... All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Actually, I apologize, it did not take public comment, so...
Well, it's also not a hearing, it's a...
Oh, all right, yeah, okay, sorry. Anyways, all right, your waiver's been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have to wait for anything at this point?
No, you can, I would contact Concom and just verify, and we'll send you a letter, but you can contact the building inspector and make sure there's nothing else he needs from you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to Walker Orthodontics at 119 Massachusetts Avenue, another request for waiver.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My name is Matt Fournier with Elite Construction and Design. a local contractor based out of Fitchburg, Mass. Currently here representing Dr. Walker with Walker Orthodontics for petition to waiver from site plan approval and the rules and regulations that would apply. The reason we're looking for that waiver is due to the fact that Walker Orthodontics had already gone through the approval process for site plan approval for 16 spaces for the lot that was about 2,850 square feet. That was approved back in February 27th of 2017. We just recently went to the ZBA for special permit approval for the use of the space. I think it was under 4.6.3.1F. So that being said, the use of the space, we don't feel is going to directly have any changes to the order of conditions that you guys have already set forth. Right now, the project has been put at a standstill based on the changes that Dr. Walker wanted to do with his lower space that we just got approved. And the only reason we put that to a stop was just so we wouldn't do any damage to completed work with dumpsters and things like that. So his intent hasn't changed on the site plan approval or the use of the parking lot. And I don't see any necessary reasons for added pieces unless the board would feel otherwise. And that's what we're here to represent tonight. Open that up for any questions you guys might have for me. And
So then we'll be looking at the same plan that we've seen.
same exact plan, no changes at all. The use of the space isn't going to be one where you're going to have mass quantities of people coming in. They're talking about having 2 to 5 employees at their max time. Working hours are probably going to be 8 to 5, and it's not going to be something where traffic or something like that's going to be negatively impacted in the area just because of the influx of cars coming in and out. It's not just going to be at set times. It's going to be scheduled out accordingly to their staff needs.
Okay.
And early on, this is a new division of their business, Airway Orthodontics, which is based off of nasal and sleep apnea. So it's a new industry. Not many people have heard of it, so it's not something that I feel people are going to be knocking down the doors every day either. It's kind of exciting for the area because we'll be the first in the region, but at the same time, it's not necessarily going to be line cars coming in and out of there.
And the lot's going to be the same, the parking lot's going to be the
Yeah,
same?
no changes at all to the
Changes.
16 spaces previously approved.
Okay.
And nothing, no changes to any of the drainage that was approved or any of the site conditions that previously set forth with greenscape or anything like that.
Great.
What are the typical length of appointments?
Typical length of their appointments, I would say anywhere from a half hour to an hour and 15 minutes at most. And they're not expecting to have a waiting room full of people either. They're looking to just kind of schedule out what their doctors can see and manage for the business, so.
Okay.
How many additional employees do you think will be added?
They're talking about doing 2 full-time and then having a part-time. And that would be, the full-time staff and then doctors sort of in and out. So that's why it's that 2 to 5 range. 2 full-time and then the others would be sort of the part-time mix. And that's just because of specialties of what they focus on.
And there's access for both levels?
Yeah, there's access for both levels. I think between the two, there's about 6,700 square feet between the 2 parking lots for a combination of 36 spots, plus or minus.
I mean, like you can get in
Oh, yeah,
for
yeah.
traffic through the second and first
No,
level?
they're not communicating spaces as far as people from upstairs aren't going to be allowed to use the back egress to come down.
Okay.
So they're not going to relate in that way. But if there was an overflow or need for additional parking or something like that, which I don't see.
And
happening.
that top lot is still going to remain paved?
Yep.
And you could put overflow there? I have one question. Who spilled the green paint?
Not this guy. But maybe
On the new pavement?
maybe we could have him deal with that.
Yeah. No,
Almost done.
It was more of a curiosity
It
question.
travels all the way into
I see it
Pittsburgh,
every day.
Yeah, looks pretty good out there on that new pavement.
So the existing business is giving up space for the new business?
No, the existing business isn't going to lose any space or trade off any space. That lower space had been used in the past for their administrative and storage, and then it was a call center at one point, and then it was a yoga studio, and I believe something in between there, maybe an
Okay.
exercise, Pilates or something like that. But that space has currently just been used for their storage and miscellaneous stuff for better part of at least 18 months or so, maybe more.
I guess this is a question for Adam. Would they be required to have like one handicap spot per use?
No,
or-
they would be required to have spots striped per the parking lot outlined in the AAB. So essentially, what's happening is they're doing a tenant fit-out of the lower portion of the building. So while you have an approved site plan on the parking lot, that was done as additional parking capacity under Dr. Walker, and now they're just looking to use the interior space that they have for tenant fit out in the method described.
Yeah, I've seen it several times. I mean, they have more than adequate parking.
I mean,
for
they
their
do
use.
have an ADA spot outlined in the front parking lot, and the rear parking lot would already have one outlined in it.
So there's an existing one?
I have not been up there, but I would venture to
have. I'm
believe
pretty
that
sure
there is
there
one.
There is, yeah,
Okay.
it's right near the door. Go figure.
All right, yeah, I don't have any other questions or comments. Any other questions or comments? All right, I'd entertain a motion to grant the waiver.
Where do we grant the waiver?
Second?
That's your question?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Thank you for your
All
time.
right,
Thank you.
thank you. All right, moving into our public hearings, we have a continuance of 40 Pioneer Drive and 98 Leominster Shirley Road, continued from August 14th.
Yeah, we've got the color
Thank you.
copies.
All right, sorry, I'll let you present.
That's fine. Good evening, Wesley Fliss, Whitman and Bingham Associates. When we were here a couple weeks ago, we basically had all the issues at that point taken care of. It seemed like the only thing we needed to bring in front of you this evening was a review letter from Graves Engineering saying that everything was addressed in their review letter, which they sent over last week, last Tuesday. In the meantime, we also got an email from the fire chief last week, I think it was last Tuesday or Wednesday, from the fire chief. He had a few concerns with regards to the project, and so what I did is I gave you guys a revised plan taking care of basically access issues on the site. So what we did is on the northwesterly corner of the entrance into the parking lot, we made that slightly larger by about 9 feet. What we did is on the second plan, if you look at on the plan set you guys have there, on sheet 3 of 8, what we do is we show the turning movements for the largest vehicle in the fire department fleet, which is the ladder truck. So like I said, what we did was we added 9 feet to the aisle width on the northwesterly corner of that driveway. Added a parking space there because we added the 9 feet. Moved the parking in front of the building slightly over to the left to create a wider or more gentle turning movement on that corner of the building, that front right-hand corner of the new building, such that we can get the fire truck in and around that odd, basically U-turn there, and then having to make the sweep around the front of the building. In addition to that, the fire chief asked for a way to be able to turn their vehicle, the ladder truck, in front of the building. And so what we had to do is we eliminated 5 parking spaces in front of the building, close to the connection of the new building to the existing building. So now we have a net decrease of 4 parking spaces. Before we were at 99 parking spaces. We're required to have 95. Now we're back at 95 proposed parking spaces. So by these changes there, we took care of a couple of the items that the fire chief had with regard to access in and around the building, being able to get their largest vehicle to the front of the building. The other item that the fire chief sent over an email on Friday, I don't know if you guys had seen all the email chain back and forth from the fire chief. The last item he had a question about with regards to the fire connections into the building.
Yep.
And how they would tie their hoses from the sprinkler connections into the building. for outside of the building. Currently, there's two connections on the existing building, one in the front left-hand corner, and then one near the front right-hand corner. What he wanted to know if we can combine at least one of those connections with a new connection that we're creating on the building. When this new addition, about 68,000 square feet, goes in, there'll be a new fire service that will service the sprinklers within that new addition. So as part of this, and I actually just got a response back from our sprinkler engineer at like 5:30 this afternoon, he said that what we'll do is we will tie in the existing connection that's there now on the right-hand side of the existing building into the new connection, such that we'll at least only have two services after the construction is done, similar to what is there now. There's no way to make all three connections work because the old connection comes in from the, basically the most southerly point of the existing building. There was no way to tie that also into the new proposed building. And so we would end up with two basically services now, similar to what there is now. The way we look at it too is kind of what we were telling the fire chief is actually the way the parking is in front of basically the existing corner of that building is better than what it is now. Right now you can't get access there. They'd have to basically carry hoses across basically a landscaped area and pretty much a treated, shrubbed area. And so we're basically opening that area up that connection can get to be a little more accessible now also. And so that's basically how we're going to take care of it. We'll have to, the way this sets up, have to put a new hydrant onto the property. That hydrant will be located close to wherever the connection is until we have the final fire design done for the buildings. We won't know exactly where that connection will be. It will be close to where the two buildings do meet, but until they have that exact location, then we'll locate a hydrant close enough to that so that the fire department can access that new hydrant also with that fire connection into the building as part of the requirement that the fire chief asked for. Obviously, as we talked about at the last meeting, we are going to go for a variance for that third entrance. At least the fire hydrant issue will go away if we get a variance for that third entrance.
And you
Right
are
now.
going for that, right?
What's that?
You are going for the variance.
We are going to go for the variance for the third entrance, yes. And in an email chain that he sent us, he said he would write a letter of support for the third entrance. He likes that option a lot better because he doesn't need to bring the fire truck up and around that loading dock area. He can just come right into the entrance that is there now. So again, there's another, obviously, department that's
So
going
this
to
is a plan
support
to
that.
mitigate the challenges presented by the fire chief in reference to not having a third entrance,
Correct,
which you're going for.
for variance for.
Variance.
So this is basically the worst-case scenario, is what you have in front of you tonight. If the ZBA does not grant the variance for the third entrance, we'll construct it the way the plan is shown in front of you tonight.
And the fire chief has seen this plan?
The fire chief saw the access plan, and he was fine with the access plan, which I think you saw the emails
Yeah,
on Thursday or Friday afternoon.
I
back
believe
and
the board
forth.
has a copy of that.
Yeah.
So the last email that he sent us was to see if we can put the connections together as much as we could, and to ask for that additional hydrant on the site. And so we'd be more than acceptable for the board to put a condition on this, such that a hydrant is placed on the site, you know, adjacent to that new fire connection, and that the two connections are combined into one connection. We have no problem with that. We'll, you know, we're making that presentation to this evening, that we can, we're agreeable to that item. We have no issue with that. Again, like I said, from a standpoint of just making sure that it was practical, I had to wait till I hear back from the fire engineer, which I said I heard from him this afternoon, and he said that was something that we can accommodate the fire chief for, so.
I guess my comment is that originally you had the entrance at 35 feet, and then
Yep.
I know you had reduced it to 30 feet.
Yep.
Is that not ideal for you? I thought we had some discretion on that. Or is it because of the modification we don't anymore? I thought that would...
No, there is discretion within the section. There is some conflict. It says the maximum is 30. It says that in access to loading areas, it needs to be
Basically, if you feel 35 works better for you, I would support that if we have the discretion. Maybe you can address that when you...
Yeah, and so we didn't
It's-
really,
it's-
the 35 or 30 feet really didn't make that much difference to us. It was really that, the width of that access into the driveway, into the, all the, basically the employee parking lot that we had to just widen out. Even if it was 35 feet there, it still didn't make any difference because the truck still wouldn't be able to make that U-turn there. it still didn't help the cause. It had to be wider at that opening.
Okay,
So
yeah, I
that's why it's
just
31 feet.
know we had some discussion with Jeff as far as the trucks
Yeah.
queuing off property, so,
Yes.
I mean, if that works better for you
Well,
and
so
we have your
as we-
discretion, I'd prefer you get what you want.
Yep, and so what I did is on the top part of it where the loading dock is, I didn't change that length. It's still 130 feet from the edge of the building to the edge of pavement. When I took the 5 feet off, I took it off of the left side of that driveway.
Okay,
So I didn't take it off of the right side of the driveway, so we didn't make any more burden on the loading dock area. So we still have the 130 feet there in the loading dock area, which is larger than the standard 120 feet. So even, like I said, even though it's 30 feet, it didn't make much of a difference from that
Right.
standpoint.
any further comments or questions from the board?
I would just like to express my gratitude for your patience and your client's patience for this board acting on this. You've done a very good job, in my opinion, in coordinating our concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question on waivers. I don't believe, and maybe I'm correct, that we didn't waive they're not submitting a plan for vegetation, correct? That was
Nope,
not one of the
and so
four.
we show the required vegetation for parking lots, which is, that basically gives you a requirement for the, I think what's 30 feet within of a radius to a parking space in the exterior of a parking lot, and so that's what we show. And so if you look at the plan where the plantings are, I show a half circle around each tree, so it shows that it connects to every parking space on the exterior of the parking lot.
Okay.
And so I show on there, and I know it was a question of Graves Engineering, to make sure that we show the species on there and the size of the trees. So I added that to the plan at the last go-around that we were here last time, so.
And I know we also had some discussions regarding the directional signage and the advertising signage. I just wanted to
Yep.
ask Adam if you felt that was handled appropriately and if there's anything we need to
Yeah,
do.
so I added the one directional sign over near the loading dock, because right now it's one entrance. If the third entrance does come back in, and if we add a sign, obviously we'll be back in front of the planning board for a modification to an approval. And so if we have to add any directional signs at that point to separate between the loading dock area and the employee parking spaces, we'll add that additional sign. But just the way the signage worked for this, that we did just add one sign up near where the split happens, where you'd go in for the employee parking, so I called out for that sign there. The large sign that's already currently existing is gonna stay. They'll reface it with their updated logo, but the size of the sign will stay the same as it is now.
And you have that located on the plan?
Correct, it's on there, yep, it's over in it's just right off the left-hand side of the existing driveway.
Yeah, just
So-
from a housekeeping standpoint.
Yeah,
And you weren't here
as
for the
long
past
as- yeah.
two meetings, so I
As
just
long
wanted
as
to
it's
make sure.
within the required setback, then I don't think there's any real issue with that.
I want to add to what Matt said. I think you guys have been great to work with. I know this has probably been a little bit frustrating to a certain level, but I certainly think that the company that you're representing, is a great company for the area. Certainly, they're having an impact. So I think this is quite an exciting expansion for you guys, and certainly excited that this is happening in our town.
Thank you.
Doesn't look, snow storage didn't change all that much, doesn't look like, right?
No, not at all.
I'll open up any comments from the public regarding this matter. Nope. Any more comments or questions from the board? I'd entertain a motion.
I move that we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second, sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you.
Are you voting on the project, or are you just closing the public hearing?
Voting on the project.
Yeah, we'll deliberate. I mean,
Yeah.
send him on his way as of yet. So I guess I'll go down the line if anybody has anything additional they want to say, or?
No.
No? Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that they're staying in town and expanding their business. I'd prefer to approach the process from a plan that they want, but I know they have to satisfy their customers and they want to get a shovel in the ground, so to speak, and get started. So I'm satisfied with this. I'm happy to support their application to the ZBA, depending on what is presented, but if he wants to give it to us, we can
Yeah,
our support
my
to
understanding
that
is
as
we
well.
can send a recommendation to the ZBA on that, also stating that we support the third driveway.
You certainly can.
Do
I
we-
wouldn't have a problem with that.
Do we need
I
to
agree
have
with
a
that as well.
meeting to do that, or I just don't want to mess up
You
their
can
schedule?
do that
if
from
they
this
go-
meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so we just request that you do that.
It sounds like there's unanimous support for the third
Yeah,
driveway.
I would suggest that you wrap this up and then you can make a motion post-approval.
Okay.
Where do we stand? Do we have a recap of where we stand in terms of any conditions that we have on this? Do we have any?
Well, we can talk construction hours and.
I think that there's a couple of things. Clearly, tonight it was presented that they're willing to combine the existing and proposed fire department connections on the building. You can certainly add that as a condition. I would do two separate conditions, one for the combination, because I think regardless of the driveway setup, that's going to be something the fire department's going to be wanting to see. They're going to want the fire department connection combined, whether there's two driveways or three. And then the second condition would be the location of the hydrant at the fire department connection. And I think that pending the final design and approval of the three driveway scheme, should the variance be granted and should they come back and approach the board, that condition may become moot. And so you may be able to remove that condition and strike the hydrant, depending on the fire chief's input.
Okay.
So those I would be the two conditions that I have. We generally attach conditions of being constructed to plan, which kind of goes without saying, but it just kind of reinforces. You have the option for construction hours. I think as far as the way the motion is phrased, I would recommend that whomever makes the motion include that the existing driveway will remain open through construction to facilitate construction entrance and employ traffic, and that it will be removed prior to final occupancy of the addition, and that will allow them to continue to operate in a way that is safe and appropriate during construction and not interfere with their employees' ability to access their facility. And other than that, I don't think that there were too many things that have come up in this plan that need to be conditioned.
All right, do we want to just address the construction hours if we feel we need it, if they're necessary?
Yeah, what's our boilerplate on that is what?
Question for Adam or myself usually?
You have not had a boilerplate. It has often
It's
been a
zoned commercial.
contextual issue.
Yeah.
In general, construction hours are anywhere from 7 to 6, Monday through Friday, 7 to anywhere in the realm of 7 to 4 on a Saturday, depending on the area. Oftentimes, there's no construction on Sundays and holidays, just as a general course. Historically, this board has looked to be more restrictive in residential areas and where there are sensitive residential abutters, as in their proximity is close, which I guess proximity really kind of says that anyway. Oftentimes with industrial areas or wholly commercial areas, the board has been a little bit more forgiving and permissive on the length and frequency of construction activities.
There's only the one house, I believe, excuse me.
And not
Yeah,
a
there is-
tremendous amount of ledge, correct?
I-
You don't want another
Yeah.
storage unit?
Certainly doesn't seem so, but
Yeah.
I think oftentimes those things present themselves as they get the backhoe in there.
Yeah.
I
I
think
know
they're,
that was kind of the situation with the storage unit.
I think they're
That was
fairly
fun.
anxious to get started. I think most of the, anything that could be considered a nuisance is going to be taken care of very quickly with the site work. And then with the one house, I don't see,
Correct.
maybe for Sundays, but other than that.
Yeah, I
don't
would say
think there's-
Sundays.
There's any need for limited construction hours.
Okay,
So should we set them at 7 to 6 is what you said, Monday?
Monday
through
to
Friday?
I mean, that's generally where you're
would-
going to fall into. I mean, we're also coming up on fall, so
Yeah, I
that
wouldn't
6
really
o'clock gets
favor that,
rolled
though.
back real quick.
I think that their location Perhaps they don't want to have construction 24/7, but I think that there's minimal impact for them having construction at 8 o'clock. They're right across the street from a 24-hour gas station. So, I mean, I would not be in favor of any restrictions on their construction hours.
I would think that we want to have some restrictions on their construction hours because there is a residence
Yeah.
that's within earshot of there. So I agree, we can be lenient. I think the 7 to 6, Monday through Friday is fine, 7 to 4 Saturday. Sounds fine to me, nothing on holidays and Sundays. That all seems completely reasonable.
Nothing on holidays and Sundays. I'm with that.
Seems
yeah.
completely reasonable. Like I said, there is one resident that's nearby there, another one probably within earshot. So I think that's reasonable. I don't think we want to have them out there building at 2 AM.
And I will say, as somebody who lives generally in that area, the 24-hour gas station is 24 hours, but it's not construction activities. And there is a gun range within proximity. And on a Sunday afternoon, when they have a heavy group out there, you certainly can hear it off in the distance. And depending on the construction activity, as you get later into the night, it is very quiet down there. We can hear the trains sometimes, so that noise does carry. So, again, I think putting some restriction, like Ken says, is a logical way to handle it.
Yes, so I would move that we approve the plan with the fire connections, hydrants, and driveway remaining in use, as Adam had stated earlier, instead of me trying to regurgitate everything that he so eloquently said. And again, the building restrictions, 7 to 6, Monday through Friday, 7 to 4 on Saturdays, no construction on Sundays or holidays. And I don't think that... was
Do you want to
there anything-
add the provision for the existing driveway being used for
I did.
construction?
He did that.
He did, okay.
Second.
Was there anything else before you second it?
I think that was
Did I
it.
cover everything?
I think you did.
Okay, now you can second it, so we don't have to amend it.
I'm going to wait a minute now. Second.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion and a second.
No.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, good luck.
Thanks. Thank you.
Hope you get your third driveway.
So do I.
So, on that point,
Oh,
can I
yeah.
move that we have Adam send us a letter of support to the ZBA, supporting the driveway remain?
Is that a motion?
As outlined in the existing plan,
Yeah, the original plan.
the original plan.
Which is the pre-existing driveway, that we not require that to be closed as a result of the zoning requiring only 2 driveways.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, he's.
Do I have to motion it? I guess I can motion it. I thought I was just requesting of Adam.
Oh,
Well, I would make it as a motion if
Okay,
the board is
then it's a
collectively
motion.
I
looking
second
to
it.
support.
Then, you want to discuss it then? Are we all in favor
All
of
in
that?
I think.
Taking my job.
No, I was just going to say it was...
All in favor?
Aye.
I
Aye.
Aye,
didn't mean to do that.
no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Our next public hearing is 994 Northfield Road.
The Lunenburg Planning Board will hold a public hearing on August 28th, 2017, 6:35 PM, Town Hall, 17 Main Street, Lunenburg, Mass. 01462. The public hearing will be to hear and discuss a special permit and site plan approval under sections 4.15 and 8.4 of the protective bylaw of the town of Lunenburg for construction of a 6-megawatt large-scale ground-mounted photovoltaic installation at 994 Northfield Road, map 037, parcel 0013. Applicant owner is 994 Northfield Road LLC, William J. Gustis, 19 Burke Street, Lunenburg, Mass. Materials are available for viewing at the planning office, 960 Mass Ave, Lunenburg, Mass. 01462.
Just 2. All right.
Good evening. Robert Bowen for Nexamp. And with me here tonight is Alan Clapp, who is the development manager, the development director for Nexamp, and Ethan Giles, who is the development manager for Nexamp. Also here is Rob Oliver, our consulting engineer from David Ross Associates, and Bill Gustis, the landowner.
If I may just interrupt, do you have
Yes.
another copy for the public that's here to?
Do we have an extra copy? Would anybody like to?
Thank you for that.
Sorry.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm going to turn over the microphone to Nexamp to start our presentation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your time. My name's Ethan Giles. I'm a development manager with Nexamp. We're a Massachusetts-based solar company. We've been in the business about 10 years. We were founded by a couple of Iraq war veterans who came back and wanted to get into the clean energy business. We've currently got about 100 megawatts operational or under development in our portfolio. We've got a couple of locations in Massachusetts we operate out of. Haverhill, we've got our electricians and maintenance staff, and in Boston, we've got our engineering and development staff. We are a company that does development, engineering, construction, operations and maintenance all in-house. We don't typically, spin it off to another company once it's built or once it's developed. Our model is to take care of the project the whole way through. What you see here is a proposed 6 megawatt facility on Northfield Road. We are here to, we'd like to be good partners with the community. We're looking forward to being good partners with Lunenburg and with Mr. Gustis as the landowner. Happy to field any of your questions as we go, and I think with that I'll hand it over to Rob, who's our consulting engineer from David E. Ross Associates, who can get into some of the technical details that would sort of introduce you to the ins and outs of the project.
Good evening. Rob Oliver, David Ross Associates. So as Ethan mentioned, this is a large-scale ground-mounted solar facility. It's at 994 Northfield Road, which is the golf course, Settlers Crossing. The property is split into two lots, Lot 1A and Lot 1B, both under common ownership. The total, Lot 1A, which the project will sit on, is 90.5 acres. Lot 1B, which the golf course sits on, actually I can probably use my laser pointer. Lot 1A, where the array is here, is 90.55 acres. Lot 1B, which is 122 acres, clearly is not shown in its entirety on this sheet. But the project proposed by Nexamp is approximately 6 megawatts. As such, under the Solar Energy Systems bylaw, requires special permit. So we've applied for a special permit and accordingly site plan approval. Go over the site a little bit with you. So as noted, the golf course is over here, and you can see on the aerial photos the fairways here to the east of the project area. So this is the project area. Access as proposed on these plans comes off of Northfield Road here. The existing clubhouse, sheds, parking are down here. Access would come in here, follow up and into the property here, then through the array as such. There's a few new lots here. This used to be one lot. It was divided up. I believe there's some houses under construction there, which aren't shown on the plans. So again, access comes in here. For the most part, it conforms to grade. We are grading some portions just to level out some of the grades, the steeper grades to get in. But for the most part, the array itself is sitting, the panels will sit on grade. There's a few areas where we're smoothing grade a little bit, that slopes that are a little too steep for the panels themselves to be efficient. So those areas which are, I think, up in here, and then here, and there's another area in here and here, where there's a little bit of grading to accommodate the panels. The site itself will be cleared and grubbed, so all the stumps within the array itself and within the fenced-in area will be removed. It will all be revegetated with meadow grasses, meadow vegetation. They'll be mowed 2-3 times a year. So just maintained enough so that it doesn't come up and interfere with the panels themselves. Outside of the fenced-in area, and actually, let me step back. There's 2 areas that are proposed for laydown and construction, here and here on the north side of the driveway, right in this location. Outside of the fenced-in area, and with the exception of the northerly laydown area, the stumps are left, they're not, it's not grubbed, and actually those areas outside the fence that are cleared will be allowed to revegetate over time. So there's no maintenance outside of the fence per se, unless absolutely necessary, and the vegetation is just allowed to come back on its own. The site to the west is bordered by New Townsend Road here, West Townsend Road rather, here. So there are residences along the road here. It's basically separated from our property by Pearl Hill Brook in this location. So there's wetlands that abut Pearl Hill Brook at the western edge of the site. And then as shown here, there's a couple of fingers of wetlands. There's a finger of wetland that comes into the site here. And then not so much a finger, but isolated pockets of wetland here and here. We filed with the Conservation Commission notice of intent for the proposed construction. In these locations, we are clearing into the buffer zone while maintaining and respecting the 30-foot no-build offset under the wetland bylaw. In this location currently, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, the access, we're proposing access as an isolated wetland here that drains to a catch basin in Northfield Road. That crossing does require a wetland crossing as designed. As a function of some of the feedback we've received, some of the comments, specifically one specifically regarding a third driveway, which there was some conversation in the previous hearing about third access on a property. This would constitute a third driveway, so we're in discussion with the owner right now to actually, rather than create an access here, to reuse the existing driveway from here past the shed, and there's a cart road.
Golf course?
What's that?
The one on the golf course?
Yeah, the driveway to kind of the left of the main building, which is here, so, I'm sorry, which is over here. There's a shed here, maintenance shed, and then there's actually an existing cart road that kind of comes in this location in the woods off of the golf course, which looks like we're going to try and use that access to a point where we then have to turn to get to our access to the array. So as of today, really, we've been discussing that with the owner and reached an agreement to use that to use that if we can. So that's going to change a few things. So there were some comments made regarding that access from the building inspector, specifically the need for variance for third driveway. So, and I know Mr. Walsh had a couple of comments, and actually DPW had a comment regarding drainage down that area, which would potentially go away with reusing the existing driveway. So that's something we will be looking at this point to address some of Graves's comments, or to address some of them rather. We will need to revise the plans, so we plan on coming back with that. But the bulk of the work really is the array itself. Part of the array and drainage, we actually have a swale on the east side of the driveway here and here, which basically collects the hill from the golf course, slopes all the way down to the brook. So we're catching some runoff here, and then we have detention basins here, 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 and here, and then we have one here for that access, which will likely change based on revision to the access. So we've addressed the Mass DEP stormwater standards with our drainage system. I know Mr. Walsh had a couple of comments on that that we'll address. But for the most part, it's fairly straightforward, and we have a couple of inlets on site to collect the runoff, and then we're piping it to the basins. A couple other basins serve basically just to collect overland runoff to help us balance out the pre and post calculations for the site. But we have done that under the post-development conditions. We've actually see a reduction in the overall flows down to the brook. So there's no impact due to drainage and runoff from the site. Other than that, again, the array is split by the access here. We have a turnaround here for more for construction vehicles to turn and leave the site, and then we have another one here. The entire site is fenced in with a gate proposed about that location. We're proposing another bar gate down near our last utility pole. So at the street, and that's something we'll have to sort out, is our utility pole locations based on the access. But we have a bar gate down here to prevent further access in, and depending on what we design and how we design the access over here, we'll look at doing the same thing if need be. So that's it. Again, just to kind of recap, everything inside the fence will be stripped and cleared and grubbed, so all the stumps will be removed. It will be revegetated and maintained over time. Runoff has been addressed in terms of stormwater standards. Electrically, equipment-wise, there are two locations, here and here, where the necessary equipment will be located on pads. Underground electric will run out and follow the access to our poles, where it comes up onto the poles. At the poles, there's some equipment meters for both the utility and the owner. So underground electric in the site, out to our poles, and then it would be overhead out to the street where they make their connection to the street utility.
That would include going through the adjoining property as well, so to avoid the wetlands?
At some point, well, we'll have to look at that, how we access the existing utility in the street. If it does cross over the wetland, it won't require likely an alteration to the wetland because it'll be all overhead. Well, there may be some clearing involved. So we'll look at that. But generally speaking, 95% of the electrical is underground up in just the last bit at the poles.
Okay.
That's basically it. I don't think there's other real issues. With the application, we submitted a substantial application packet to address everything that's required of the bylaw. So the application, both for site plan approval and special permit, are part of that package, with some backup information regarding the applications and in the information required. So there's a long list under section 1.0 of, we included all the things that are included under the bylaw and the regulations, and address what's been provided or what hasn't been provided or was not applicable. Certified abutters list is included. We include a project narrative which discusses the existing conditions on the site, the proposed, which I explained already. There's a letter to the utility notifying Unitil and back from Unitil that they've received the intent to connect to the system. There's some information included regarding the electrical equipment on site, the array rack itself, and how they're placed on site. There's an executed lease agreement between Mr. Gustis and Nexamp to lease the portion of the site where the array and access will be coming in. In addition to that, so kind of flipping through here rather quickly, Nexamp is included there, insurance certificate as required. There is what's called an O&M services plan, which describes Nexamp's responsibility in running and maintaining the site and what their function is and what they're committing to doing. There is a solar emergency response plan, which talks about internal, external reporting, emergency response procedures, fire, site restoration. There's a decommissioning plan with a cost estimate provided to include the cost of decommissioning the facility in the future if that becomes necessary or a part of the project or the project's dismantled. I can certainly, if you haven't had time to go through the application, or if you have questions about the application or the information that's provided, we can certainly, between myself and the Nexamp folks, try and answer those for you.
What kind of additional buffering are you providing between the open field and the residents that are surrounding? Is it going to be heavily wooded to a point where you can't actually see the field from your backyard?
Yeah, the whole area, so from the brook out, there's some wetlands, but it's it's pretty heavily wooded in there. So all through here, we're relying on natural vegetation, which is primarily wooded. Down here, this is going to go all natural. There's some buffer remaining. Out here, there's nothing.
Right, that's just rock.
Yep. And we've got the golf course over here, which there's still a strip of natural vegetation.
So if I was on any of these properties on Northfield and I go to the end limits of the Residence A zone, and I looked towards this field, you're telling me I won't be able to see the field through the woods?
If you were at the backs of these properties, yeah, the
No, not those, the ones on Northfield.
which ones here?
Yeah.
These new houses, one of Mr. Walsh's comments were, we don't show those houses. So we're going to look at that, but if there were a location where you might be able to see through in winter conditions, that might be it. I know if additional screening is necessary, I think Nexamp is willing to provide that. I believe Mr. Gustis has had a conversation or some feedback. No, okay. But it's certainly, it's on the table if it's necessary.
Okay.
I have several questions, but I think many will come up over the course of the meeting. My first is just, kind of a little technical about your financial surety. The bylaw that we have, my understanding in 415, 412. Proponents of large-scale solar, I'm going to say this wrong, photovoltaic projects shall provide a form of surety, either through an escrow account, bond, or otherwise, to cover the cost of removal in the event the town must remove the installation and remediate the landscape in an amount and form determined to be reasonable by the Development Plan Review Authority. What you submitted to us basically says, this is what, I'll keep reading. On the second page, the highlight here is that such surety will not be required for municipal or state-owned facilities. A project owner operator shall submit a fully inclusive estimate of the cost associated with removal prepared by a qualified engineer. Somehow I must have missed that in here, and then I also missed the surety. I mean, basically, what you have is says, other projects around this size cost this much to decommission, so we're going to go with that, and that's what this is going to cost. I don't know if that really meets the requirements in our bylaw. And then the other thing is the surety basically says we'll fund it in 11 years, 10 or 11 years. So can you reconcile this with me? I'm a little confused.
Alan, can you speak to that?
Sure. Alan Clapp with Nexamp. Good evening.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Sure. So I'm not exactly sure what got submitted in, but the way we generate our estimates for decommissioning surety is that we ask our site contractors, who typically would be hired to remove and demolish, remove all the equipment that's out there, and restore the existing land back to its original, well, not wooded condition, but a meadowed condition, so it was all vegetated. And as part of that process, the other element is the salvage value that is recoverable by, again, the decommissioning company. And again, it's a separate entity, different from the demolition site contractor group. So we've gone out and obtained construction bids from, and I think in this case it was Beauregard is our main general contractor. And we've contacted 2 different recycling facilities down in the southern areas, mostly because it's a more mature market. They've been dealing with for essentially 20 years. And we use those as estimates for, again, what it costs to remove it and get everything out of there and return it back to a field, and then take the credit for the salvage value. And that has yielded an amount that has averaged $6,000 to $7,000 per megawatt of projects. In this case, it's a 6 megawatt project. And we've made that presentation to many other communities, and that's what we try to support in the chart there is, the variations of those different numbers and stuff. And some towns agree with that. Some towns have actually suggested it could be 0, they're lower, and some are higher.
Yeah. Well, I guess what I'm trying to understand is that, the bylaws that we work under, reads, "The project owner operator shall submit a fully inclusive estimate of the cost associated with removal prepared by a qualified engineer." Do we have in front of us a fully inclusive estimate of the cost associated with removal by a qualified engineer? Do we have that in front of us?
What I'm unsure of, Rob, is did your firm review our information from actual bids and concur or not concur? And
We've reviewed the information that was submitted, that we submitted in the application. I don't dispute the number that Nexamp arrived at. If we're not, I mean, we can certainly take another look at it, but I found no reason not to go with that number.
Yeah, I'm not trying to say this from a perspective of whether I agree with your numbers or not. Really, it's just a matter of, the citizens of this town have bylaws, and the bylaw says that we're supposed to have from you a prepared and fully inclusive estimate by a prepared engineer, and I just don't see that. So that's why I'm just asking if that's in it. It seems, I think we can go back and forth in that, but I think you've answered my question.
Okay.
So thank you, but I have another one.
Sure.
Where is Nexamp based out of?
our corporate headquarters is in Boston, Massachusetts.
Now, when I was going through and I was looking at how you're going to maintain the grounds, I'll tell you, it was really impressive that as a company that you guys choose to do this yourselves, so that I believe it was asset management. Unrelated, how much, unrelated to what's in front of us today, what is your contribution to the town going to be in tax dollars from this project? Just, can you remind, I didn't see that, so can you remind me of that?
There, yet to be completed is a pilot negotiation that we're entering into. I believe at town meeting it was approved that the selectmen would negotiate on behalf of the town.
Correct. And where are you guys at in that process?
In the middle is what I know a proposal has been made. I don't believe a decision has been made yet.
Yeah, what concerns me off the bat, and unrelated probably to what you've proposed to us today, is that you're going to put a lot of money, right? I mean, out here on these 36 acres or whatever it is, correct? And if something were to happen and you guys are located in Haverhill or somewhere else, you're relying upon the police. The police are funded by the taxpayers. So I'm curious as to what your contribution is to the tax base that certainly is built into your security plan for your stuff.
It is.
I think that's kind of critical for the, unrelated to what's in front of us today, but I think that's a critical piece of the packet, right? Because I'm assuming that you fully expect the police to respond if there's some kind of suspicious activity or something going on this property, correct?
Or the fire department.
Or the fire department.
And the fire.
Yeah, and it's only reasonable that, that the residents of this town aren't paying for, aren't the only ones who have to pay for your security and your protection.
Correct. No, we fully anticipate coming to a mutually agreed upon pilot agreement with the town, which is secured for the life of the project. So we do make that same payments throughout the duration of the project, or maybe slightly escalating.
Can you tell me who made that proposal? Was it your group that made the proposal?
Our firm, yes.
To the BOS?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
I did speak to the chair of the BOS today, and he was unaware that any negotiations had started.
Okay.
And just to point out that if you do not come to an agreeable agreement with them, there is the potential for this town to receive zero tax revenue from this project. Is that correct?
There are current previous law cases that have been litigated that way. Depending on who you sell your electricity to is the deciding factor, whether it applies or it doesn't apply.
If it's a taxable entity, then
Yes.
you are exempt from personal property tax.
Correct. It's our position, and our historic position is to come to an acceptable negotiation with the town.
I guess that some of my concerns are more global at this point than the finer details. Is there a way to inquire whether this process can support the process of that negotiation, do you know?
I don't know that I understand the question.
Are they combined, so we're here to look out for the public good, and the project shouldn't have detriment to the town, So if they do not come to an agreement, then there would be no benefit to the town. Is there any way these projects, or these process...
So I'm clear what you're saying is that if
to
we...
work, hold on, let me finish. Sorry to interrupt, but, so is there a way for these, and it's maybe a question for town council, that these proceedings can work in tandem with that negotiation to quantify the benefit to the town, since we are looking out for the public good?
I will say I don't know, only because the pilot is a negotiation between the property owner and the Board of Selectmen, and the special permit is between this board and the property owner on the use. And I understand what you're saying. I don't know that legally there's a way to tie the two together within land use. I will check with town council. I will also note that the property owner will need a construction general permit from EPA and a stormwater special permit from this board for disturbance over 40,000 square feet, which we had talked about, and I think they're waiting to get into that process until they're certain of what the final design will look like. But I will verify what we can and can't do as part of this process in regard to the pilot.
Okay. And then one of my other global concerns is that with the Chase Road and Pleasant Street projects coming online, it had created a situation where it overloaded the grid, and the residents of this town could not get solar on their roofs. I'd like to substantiate that they have capacity not only for this project, but for the residents of Lunenburg, so they don't get shut off.
Yeah, anyone on that circuit needs to be able to tie in too. You know?
Yeah, well, what I would say is Unitil wouldn't have signed an internet connection agreement if they couldn't on-take this load. I don't know about the additional load of residents, so I will see if Unitil can verify that they will or won't be able to do that.
But to be clear, we don't have an agreement with them. We have an application submitted to Unitil.
No, the project proponent has an interconnection agreement with Unitil because they need to be able to put this power somewhere. There's no load on site
Unitil has to
with
accept
which
it.
they're putting, so Unitil and Nextamp have an agreement, which is called an interconnection agreement, which allows them to take this 6 megawatt DC system, hook it back into the three-phase power at the street, and it goes into the ether and electrons.
Where is that
and all the
agreement?
There's a letter in the packet that alludes to the fact that an agreement has been reached and that Unitil has signed it.
Maybe,
The actual agreement may not be in there, but again, that's a legal contract between two private parties, and
what I saw in here, and that was another one of my mini questions, was I saw a letter from Unitil saying that we received your application.
It was in February.
In
It did say
February.
5 megawatts versus
Correct.
6.
and I think that's an AC/DC issue.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah, so AC/DC, depending on which scale you're using, depends on the size of the project.
Correct, but I guess what we're looking at though is the letter, to read it, the letter is to notify that Unitil has reviewed your application to interconnect 5 megawatts at 995 Northfield Road, Lindbergh, Mass, and determine that the information in the package and the application package is complete. Your application will now be processed through the technical review, and it goes on that way, but I do not read this to be an approval.
You're correct.
So where we're at in the process is, the reference of the document is called an ISA, Interconnection Service Agreement. And we have received that, and they have told us the improvements that we need to make to tie into their group. And we have had that agreement. What we haven't done is made a certain payment to them to begin the design of the construction improvements. That's when that signature occurs, and then you would have that executed contract.
Would you be able to provide that to us as a substitute for this letter?
At that point in time, absolutely. It hasn't occurred
They
yet.
don't have that
Okay.
until it's approval to do the project, because they're not going to invest in the improvements until they have approval to do the project.
Right, correct.
So there's a payment required for them to get
Yeah,
that.
they have to pay to get that.
And what you could do is as a condition of the approval, if you get to that point, you can require them to submit the formal interconnection agreement from Unitil prior to the issuance of a building permit. I imagine that the issuance of the special permit is probably one of the things, if not one of the larger portions that they're waiting for before they make what I, again, will infer is a substantial payment for the upgrades necessary to finalize that.
Yeah, it's actually spelled out in 4.15.4.5.
Correct.
But it does say that the utility company operates electrical grid where the installation is to be located, has been informed of the applicant's intent to construct a solar voltaic installation, and that the approval to connect to the grid has been granted, or appropriate applications have or will be made to such utilities for interconnection. So I believe that was the application.
Correct.
And they need to,
Yeah. I think that the letter you provided certainly meets the requirements of what we're looking for, but my concern really, I mean, Unitil, for many residents, Unitil has been unable to allow residents to connect into the grid, saying that they don't have the capability. And so it seems really bizarre to me that we have some residents in town who can't get solar on their roofs, but somehow Unitil can accommodate 6 megawatts.
I thought that was actually rectified.
I think that has been rectified. It was, what it was a technology issue at a switching station, and for a period of time, Unitil kept waiting for Golden Goose to show up and want to do a project and be willing to invest those funds. And I think over time, they identified that it was worth their time and effort. And I believe it was early winter last year that they completed the upgrade on what, if I'm not mistaken, was 2 circuits in town. And they felt that going forward, that would provide capacity beyond what they felt would be necessary going forward. So unless there's a third or fourth circuit that this project may be accessing that either hasn't received the upgrade or was already upgraded, would be something we just have to verify.
Okay.
The two processes are typically not related. The utility company does separate a a large-scale project in the residential folks. They're typically independent.
Okay.
We still don't want to make the same mistake
No, I'll
twice.
do some verification.
The geography of this area is 3 hilltops, roughly. Can you be a little more specific with what you're grading and how much you're grading?
Well, the overall area of the array that is to be cleared is in the 30 to 35 acre range, some of which will then be left with the stumps in place and left to revegetate. The area is completely wooded. I don't know if that answers your
It
question.
doesn't. My question was, what areas are going to be graded, and how much are they going to be graded?
Sure, I could answer that. Sure. Topographically, it's our goal to leave the topography untouched as much as possible. We have a maximum slope that they can actually build the array at. The racking contractor has a requirement. That's a 20% slope. So there are 2 or 3 smaller areas that had to get flattened from maybe 25% to 20.
Right, so we have an area here.
Small area here. Small area here. Right here, and 4th here. Essentially 95% of the area will remain. So essentially what happens there is tree clearing, scrubbing, removing roots, and chipping all that stuff into trucks and removing it, and the topsoil that exists there will stay in place, and they work right on top of that existing topography. Again, it's our goal to minimize what we disturb, and it's to our benefit as well as yours, to leave it alone. So we really try to minimize that.
Yeah, and in this area, this is my last question. In this area, and with clearing 36 acres, and we all, I think, can reasonably assume that there's a lot of wildlife that lives out here. And just so I'm clear, this is a plan to fully gate this entire area, correct? Over
Correct.
36 acres of land, which would then make it inaccessible to people, animals, wildlife, etc., correct?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions at this time.
I have a question. Oh,
by all means.
The 200-foot buffer strip, that's a gray area, is that correct, Adam?
A gray area?
You said it wasn't really descriptive of what the buffer consists of? But they do have a, there's,
It's very clear, I think.
so 450 and 47 says that there shall be a 200-foot buffer strip, and then the minimum setback is not less than 200 feet from the front, the side, and the rear if it abuts a residential, conservation, or recreation district.
It actually says, though, a 200-foot depth along such abutting lot lines unless the applicant can demonstrate and the planning board finds that adequate buffering can be provided in a narrower strip. So there is a 200-foot setback requirement. The buffering requirement is 200 feet or the planning board finding that what is there is acceptable. You're looking at the eastern portion of the property, abutting the golf course?
I'm looking at the northerly portion abutting the residence, and I'm looking at the westerly portion abutting residence.
The southern.
As far as the
Southern.
buffer strip not being 200 feet?
Right.
And the southern.
Not only that, their limit of clearing is close to 50 feet off the property line.
And again, this would be a situation where they would be looking to have the board find that less than the 200 feet of buffer is adequate. The panels, if I'm not mistaken, are 200 feet or greater from those property lines.
So the panels are, but there's a fence and there's an access way, a driveway.
Right.
It says ground-mounted installations shall be surrounded by a buffer strip. So
Any accessory structures?
fence is not a structure.
The driveway is, though, is it not?
Driveway is not a structure.
It's not considered a structure?
No.
Okay.
Similar to a patio.
A fence up to 6 feet in height is not considered a structure. Is that not correct?
I believe, and again, we can verify with the building inspector, I believe anything under 8 feet is not considered a structure.
Okay.
Once you break the 8-foot plane, you get into a structure, you require a building permit, you're required to meet setbacks, et cetera. I don't believe that they're proposing anything greater than 8 feet.
But you're going to stump everything and then basically allow it to just grow back like in a pollard style, right?
Sure. Let me just step back. I'll answer both questions, or Adam's point. The chain link fence that will surround the array is a 7-foot chain link fence. So it falls under the 8-foot cutoff for building permit. As far as I understand, the driveway itself is not considered a structure and doesn't need to meet the setback. The array itself, the panels, do require to meet the setback, the 200-foot setback as prescribed under the energy bylaw, and they do. If there's any question, Lot 1A and 1B are under common ownership, so under zoning, they're considered one entity. So there's no real setback issue here. We meet the 200 in all other locations.
And that's 200 to the panels or 200 of like buffer vegetation between the open area and the residential area?
There's both. There's a 200-foot setback, property line setback requirement, which is met. And then there's the 200-foot strip of vegetation or something less that can be demonstrated that's, suitable to the board. So there's two, there's both items. David, to answer your question regarding the vegetation, outside of the fence where we're clearing, with the exception of one area that we're going to use as a laydown area for materials here, the stumps will remain. So all the vegetation stays behind. We're not stripping it. We're not stripping anywhere. We're clearing and grubbing within the fence, which will then be vegetated and let go to similar to a meadow. It will be mowed 3 times a year. Essentially, I'm told, so it doesn't reach up to the bottom of the panels. They don't want it interfering with the panels.
But the pollarded trees, you're just gonna leave the stumps, and then suckers will grow out on the sides, and they'll fill in naturally over time.
Are you relying on any of the buffering outside of that lot? Like, what's the minimum area for buffering where it abuts the residences?
There's an area here and an area here where I believe we're under the 200-foot. This lot, the house is down here, and the property's wooded. So it's not necessarily on site, but there is at least a 200-foot buffer of vegetation.
All right, but my concern is that you're relying on their vegetation for your buffer, so if they go to clear their lot, then the buffer is instantly reduced.
Right, that's on you, not them.
They shouldn't bear the burden of the
house
buffer.
on there, yeah.
And that's my other concern is that if these lots, either one are individually sold, and I think it's referred to in the building inspector's letter, that the setback would be instantly non-conforming.
Right, so there's two issues, I'll touch on both, starting with the screening. Nexamp isn't opposed by any means to providing some additional screening, fitting for the project and for the neighbors. We wouldn't rely on any kind of fence, it would be just natural vegetation. We can certainly look at that, and if the board feels it's necessary, we can add that. The second issue being the two lots. So again, under zoning, because they're under common ownership, they're considered one lot. That's what the building inspector has confirmed. His point is that if the owner ever wanted to sell off Lot 1A, because it is an approved lot, it's an A&R signed and recorded, it would alter the setback requirement. We wouldn't meet it in that location. So something would have to be done, whether it's redrawing the lot lines to make it conform, or coming back to this board, for instance, and asking for a waiver against that requirement with screening. So he's correct. If that lot wanted to be sold, something would have to be done to make it conform to zoning, in terms of the array itself.
And the fence is outside the no-touch, all the way around, on any wetlands?
We are not proposing anything in the 30-foot no build. No clearing, no fences, no nothing.
Okay.
Have you guys talked to anyone that abuts this property to say, hey, we're going to build this, or we want to? What can we do to help mitigate any impact on you?
My understanding, there's been a few conversations with the owner and a few of the neighbors, but there hasn't been a concentrated effort to get everyone together and talk about the project. So, again, my understanding is a few of the neighbors have inquired, and Mr. Gustis has spoken to a few people.
Okay.
And
Sorry to interrupt, but we will have the ability during public comment to address.
Correct.
Awesome.
I mean, the neighbors have all been notified as part of the public hearing process.
This project is uphill to all of the properties that are surrounding it, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Will there be any way to see it from Northfield Road?
I don't believe so.
I was on New West Townsend Road earlier today, and given the location of the brook that's there, I mean, you're building on a hillside. There's no way that they're not going to see this in their backyard. And I was also on Northfield Road today, looking at some of these houses. I mean, some of these are, $370,000 homes. I mean, I wonder what their value is going to be once this goes up.
I don't want to speculate on property values surrounding the project. I can say
What's been the historical trend for you guys?
Do you have any
What is
answer
your
for that?
historical impact on property values?
To be honest with you, the last project that I was on about 6 months ago, we had a real estate appraiser testify to this, and he testified that there was no change in value from a project.
And where was this at?
The project itself was in Coventry, Rhode Island. The problem is there's so little evidence of actual home sales next to projects, and he reached out to Mansfield, Massachusetts, and found 2 or 3 homes that had sold, and it was his opinion that those sold at the value that they were properly appraised and sold. He testified as an expert at a zoning hearing that there was no change. And again, our research indicates that there isn't a lot of data to swing this one way or the other, because it's such a subjective issue, quite frankly. I think the best we could say it's been neutral, and there are folks that love it and would go there because they love this type of thing, and there are others that would say, no, I can see a fence, I can see metal, that's terrible.
I think what would be really impressive personally, and this is a little, personal, but what I think would be really impressive is if you guys were able to have a presentation in which you said, look, we're coming into the community, we're going to disturb, 36 acres of land, but we've talked to the neighbors, this is how we're mitigating this is what we're contributing to the taxpayers since we're outsourcing our security to them. This is how we're going to basically minimally impact others and everyone else. Instead, I think that, that's not what's in front of us today. and I really want to state that I hope that we are very pro, business interest and business ideas. I have a lot of struggles with what I'm looking at and how it's going to impact everyone around it. I know I'm a property manager in my, outside of this. Sure. And I know if I spent the amount of money, that it's costing, I'm sure, these developers to build these houses. And, part of what appeals, this has been a conversation in our town recently anyway, part of what appeals to, I think, Lunenburg is a lot of land. Now, anyone could do what they want to do, right, with their land, but this is recreationally zoned land. And it's being used, and by our bylaw, it certainly can be used for solar purposes. There's no conflict there. I guess I'm just a little concerned about, I'm a veteran myself, and I certainly support veterans getting involved and getting businesses. There's a need out there. The unemployment rate for veterans is outrageous. So I certainly want to support veterans. I think that there's probably, I wish that it would be really impressive, again, if you guys would have came here with a little bit more community engagement. I think you're asking the town for a lot in terms of security, I do, without also presenting some other form of, hey, this is how we're helping. I think, again, it would be beneficial if you guys were able to talk to the neighbors and say, these are areas that we made some changes based on conversations with people who live around here, and this is how we're responsibly going to be neighbors to those in the community. And, it seems, based on this proposal, it seems like we're in a position to kind of have to push you back a little bit here.
I can just add a little something to that. As a member of the board, we were sent on, a couple of us were sent to a meeting in Worcester with the state of Massachusetts legal team from DOOR, and they were talking about some of the things that they're sort of shying away from now. And this is a lot of clear cutting, and that's one of the things they said that they didn't want to see. They want to see less clear cutting because that's what, it helps the environment, the drainage, everything, shade, everything, the beauty. And it's kind of shocking because that was about 1.5 years ago to see, that much clear cutting going on.
On a hill, and they haven't talked to the neighbors downhill.
Yeah. There was even talk about incentivizing or de-incentivizing by passing some new stuff in the regulations to sort of get away from clear cutting. But
Sorry, but I did attend the same. That sentiment was sent along by Mass Audubon's Stephanie Cavino, so she did represent them and say they were sort of looking to have these projects on already opened land. And in regards to stormwater, they were not leaning towards it, but looking into whether these should be considered impervious surfaces. I think the standard was if they were on like over a parking lot or something along those lines, but that's also something they've been looking into to change.
I can actually address that if I might.
Okay.
Some of the research we've done and even input from Matt Morrow is that the Mass Association of Conservation Commission has recommended that these be considered as what's called disconnected impervious. And that's how this was modeled. Essentially, it flows off onto the ground and runs over land rather than sheeting on a large impervious surface. So it does bump the numbers up somewhat in terms of the runoff by doing that, but it's certainly not counted as strict impervious like a parking lot.
I see as if all the panels are in rows, it hits the rows, it all hits the ground. And
right, and that's accounted for.
Somewhat like running off a roof, but it's over grass. And in the required documents, the provision of water, including the needed for fire protection, and you say this project does not require that provision. Are you saying these are not a fire hazard or have the ability to catch on fire?
What we're suggesting is that water is not the resource that typically we use.
Okay.
Because it's electrical, you tend to use foam or things like that, and that actually would be administered by, our response team or with the training of the local first responders.
And where's your response team again located out of?
They're currently located in Haverhill.
That is okay. Haverhill from here is about an hour away. So your response team, if we have a fire, your response is an hour away.
So In our plan is what we ask is to be contacted immediately, and the fire department's role will be there. If
course.
there's typically if any fire occurs, because there's a very low probability, this would be a grass fire. And that's the type of thing that they would control with water at the perimeter. It's really not recommended for the fire department to enter, again, depending on the conditions. If it's a life safety issue of a person that's down, that's obviously not the case. But they're not going to be there spraying water on an electrical system. That doesn't make any sense. They know where the shutoffs will be, they'll turn the system down, and they'll keep it from spreading. And
Does our fire department have foam for stuff like this?
My question,
In
do we have a foam
capacity?
tanker? I mean, you have to have the truck, it's not gonna be a hydrant available.
Training and the equipment, I would ask.
And have you guys
We have
made a
them in town.
commitment?
About that?
Have you guys made a commitment simultaneously to provide resources for the training and the resources for the local fire department that the taxpayers are paying for to be able to provide that for your facility?
we provide training for each and every project we have, yes.
Okay.
And beyond that, it's yet to be determined. It depends what each community needs. Yes, we have in-house trainers that work with first responders.
And just to touch on Michael's comments about the buffering and how it would look under the required documents, section U, it states that sightline representations depicting the profile, the view of the proposed installation, and any appurtenant structures from the location upon any public road within 300 feet would have the most unobstructed view of installation and from the closest wall of each residential building within 300 feet of the highest point of installation. Is that the same? And that's spelled out in our bylaw, so
Yeah.
we may require some visual aids or...
The only spot on the project where, and it's been brought to my attention recently by Mr. Walsh, all the homes on New West Townsend Road through here are possibly not this one, but all of these homes are greater than 300 feet. Apparently, there are some homes under construction here, which may fall under that. So if anything, it would be this area.
Okay.
Do you have any response to the concerns about a loss of a carbon sink and the destruction of habitat?
Sure. So it's a difficult discussion about the carbon, so forth, but one approach to this, and it's online through the EPA, is if you look at tree removal as a negative, which an Audubon Society would, what it's being replaced with is clean energy that is producing electricity for the public. And so an equivalent way to view those two things is how much oil or fossil fuel could be reduced at the power plant that generates electricity from this plant, and how many trees would that compensate? So you compare the two in the number of trees, and it's a pretty loose connection, I readily admit, but I believe it's 6 to 8 times greater for this, the amount of trees this could save by reducing carbon fuels, carbon products used at a power plant.
That logic, if we cut down every tree and put up a solar panel,
I
it would be better
understand.
off for the environment?
I understand.
And put a fence around
Well,
it.
I understand we view them each as, but
That's why I
with that
don't
logic,
put
it's-
that out there, but that's on the EPA website if you're interested in looking at that. And secondly, when you look at the environment, the habitat, I mean, a meadow environment does get created in its place. Stormwater is infiltrated and recharged just like it does today. And there is a lot of merit for a meadow environment as well. There are pollinators, there are small rodents, there are birds, there are a number of different things that will prosper because it's a meadow environment instead of a forested environment. So it's not the same, but it still has value, it still has environmental value. And so those are the defenses of, is a meadow better or worse than a forest? I'm not qualified to make that case, but I do know that a meadow environment is valuable, especially around a large forested area.
I think that I live next to about 60 acres, well, more than that, of meadows. So I certainly agree with you, but there's no fence around the meadows.
Mm-hmm. Pollinators, small rodents, things in the ground, birds of prey. rabbits, all those type of things. Come and go as they please.
Well, this is a little off topic, but
It's
I
just
agree. I think
different.
it's different, for some reason, they take the, I understand because of the recharge of water and everything, but we would demand replication if it were a wetland, but we don't demand replication for the loss of these trees, so it's interesting.
Any other large project, I mean, I compare it to Walmart Mountain. That had to be cleared to create that. So I wouldn't single out a solar array.
Zoning, but yes.
And
Yes,
it was,
no,
it was largely field
That's not even
already.
fair.
I was just making the point that any large project is going to require clearing. This one, the net result is some other form of habitat rather than a parking lot.
But parking lots tend to provide a tax base for this town, and this doesn't seem to do that.
Not yet.
But we,
Not yet.
but we do propose a pilot with your community.
Correct.
And over the life of the property, there are other approaches where you could take the cash value and depreciate it quickly, and we'd be paying taxes for a short period of time and then nothing. And it's difficult for a town to rely upon that. We find most communities prefer the steady cash flow that they can rely upon for the duration of the project. It seems to make more sense.
Is Nexamp part of the community solar program that
Yeah.
allows residents of Lunenburg to get discounted electricity?
Yes, we are.
Thank you.
Have you started offloading that to other communities?
No,
Or other,
not yet. It'd be premature, but this could possibly, half of this
This-
project
be,
could become community.
I think what he's asking is in other communities where you've located projects, have you participated in offloaded community solar within those communities?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Yes.
Mr. Chair, at what point do we ask anyone here from the public to speak?
usually we take general comments from the board, and if everybody's, their initial comments have been addressed, then we can take public comment.
Well, I think my initial reaction has been addressed, but I certainly will have more. Like a chance to really review things.
So, I spoke in the beginning, and the comments I made in the beginning are pretty much my biggest concerns. I support solar projects in general. What I'd really like to make sure is that we have adequate buffer space and vegetation between the properties, at the property lines, so that the solar installation is not an eyesore to those residents. I absolutely want to make sure there's no way you can see this from Northfield Road. I think Northfield is listed as a
Scenic road.
Scenic road, yeah.
Scenic road, and I don't think that a solar field is appropriate for a scenic road. But that's not to say, I mean, if I owned any of these residents, I wouldn't want to sit on my back porch and used to look into a woods and see deer and so forth, and then now see a view of solar panels. It's not as good. So I'd like to make sure we had some kind of buffering there. But other than that, it looks like you've addressed the water recharge issues and things like that. Obviously, we'll get detailed input from our engineers, but, my concerns are the water habitat, the wetlands area down here. I'd like to see you put that road around it so that we don't disturb that area, and make sure that the visual impact of it is not really negative. But I do like what Nexamp does for the community. I think the community solar program is a fantastic program, and I think giving back to the residents of the town via that program is very valuable.
Talk about lighting. Can you talk about lighting?
I don't believe there is any.
No lighting.
No lighting.
Good.
This would be a question for Adam, but in regards to substantiating the buffer, it says in section 41547 that the buffer strip shall be 200 feet in depth along such abutting lot lines unless the applicant can demonstrate and the planning board finds that adequate buffering can be provided in a narrow buffer strip. So for them to demonstrate that, I think we have the ability to request some sightlines and
Some sight lines.
renderings. I'd prefer it be both summer and winter, because the worst case scenario is 5 to 6 months out of the year where there's no leaves on the tree. The middle of August is full foliage, so. And again, I'm not, it's a
Well, I mean, there are-
response to Ken's, if there's anything you
Well, the
think we
trouble is,
need.
we don't really define buffer strip, right? We don't define what it has to be comprised of. So a buffer, 200-foot buffer could be open air. That's a 200-foot buffer, right?
Right.
And that's what I don't want. I
Right,
want
well, that's what
a
we're here to do.
visual buffer that provides some kind of visual deterrent to just seeing a solar field in your backyard.
Right.
So,
Right,
the buffer strip requirements are dimensional, not visual. And what I'm asking for, above and beyond what's in here, is a visual buffer, just so you understand.
Yeah, I mean, and it's just, when the Pleasant Street went in, what ended up happening is they basically went household to household and said, you know, what can we provide you to make you happy with the projects that we're not, you know, so you're happy with what you're seeing. They didn't do a very good job down in that one.
Yeah, but some residents also forwent the bufferings, because
Yep.
they'd rather have the open view than a bunch of arborvitae's right up against their
Right.
property line.
So there was a, you know,
But in a general way, it was our opinion on the westerly side that there is a stream in there. It is a riverbank wetland. There's a substantial amount of wetlands in there that can't be touched by anyone, residents or us, and it's all remaining in place.
Well, at this
Yeah,
point,
Significant.
I'm more concerned with the southern side than I am the westerly side.
I
I
drove,
was just speaking to that because I think you were.
Yeah, I'm concerned about the westerly side because it's, you know, it's a hill. And, you know, if you're clearing the top of a hill, sure they might, and unfortunate for them, they abut, you know, a marsh type area. So it's directly across the marsh, you start clearing.
I drove that too, and it goes down in the backyard and then immediately back up, so.
Yeah.
So we can't, I don't think the standard is to make any proposed development disappear.
No,
You 35-foot industrial buildings, you get a little bit of screening.
of course.
These are 8 or 9 feet tall, and there's a few hundred feet of natural vegetation that's going to remain, and it'll be a filtered view. But if it goes uphill like this, I expect that view will be different for those folks. I mean, it will be lighter, there will be a meadow there, but it will be filtered through natural forests and wetlands and bushes and trees. It's not wide open at all, by any means.
if the board doesn't mind, I think that we have people in the audience that may be directly affected, and I'd like to hear from them, if that's okay.
That's great.
That's great, yeah.
If you wouldn't mind just coming up to the microphone, identifying yourself for the record.
Hi, my name is Gail Stewart, and I live on 252 New West Townsend Road. And the view we have behind us is lovely and beautiful, and I really don't want to be looking at solar panels. But I did not know anything about this until I got the letter to come here tonight. So I did go online and printed or downloaded this booklet, which was made by the Mass Department of Energy Resources, Mass Department of Environmental Protection, and Mass Clean Energy Center. And in the very beginning, it says, use of land for the purpose of solar photovoltaic power generation should be compatible with most other types of land usage. However, DOER, which is Mass Department of Energy Resources, strongly discourages designating locations that require significant tree cutting because of the important water management, cooling, and climate benefits that trees provide. DOER encourages designated locations in industrial and commercial districts or on vacant, disturbed land. Now, my concern also is you said that you have like drainage systems or whatever. I mean, God forbid we have a hurricane like Texas had, 30-plus inches of rain. That would come right down that hill onto our home. And that is my big concern. I just don't understand why you have to have it like in a residential area where you can find a field somewhere and do it. And also, as far as the wildlife goes, in this booklet, there is also saying that there is a noise, a humming, that comes from this. Now, I'm assuming the wildlife, would not like this, the birds or whatever. And also, there is something in here which I really didn't understand that well. The EMF exposure the electrical magnetic exposure, that it would be in the air. I know it has to be a certain amount of footage or whatever, but it just concerns me because I live there. You know,
And how
that
long
is
have you
my
been living
home.
there?
For almost 50 years. So I really would hate to sell, but this really kind of scares me. And that's all I have to say. If you'd like a copy of this, I did spill my water on it, but there's a lot of information in here that is really kind of scary. So,
To the chair, can we accept that
Sure.
into our record?
if you want this.
We may have access to
I-
it.
it's-
If you-
I have my
I think it's
little hen
similar to-
scratching and stuff. Oh, no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Ron Smith, 1026 Northfield Road. As usual, Ken Chenis has stole my thunder. But I'd like to be a little more specific than Ken, because I agree with what he said, and he took many topics right out of my mouth. I'm also, I am not an opponent to this project. I want the landowner and the project managers and so on to know that. I am probably the single largest resident abutter to this project, just looking at the plan tonight for the first time. So I abut it at 1026 Northfield Road. I did buy the land from the golf course several years ago. And you guys saw me here, and we did an A&R, and that's me over there you're looking at on the south side. So, Ken, you started with the south side. I do own the southernmost point, and I'm going to walk away from the mic for a minute to point some stuff out.
You can bring it with you.
take the mic with
You take
you.
it right off. Yep.
I don't think so, hang on. So this parcel here was once mine, all of it. And I got this from Mr. Gustus. And he's a great neighbor, by the way. I don't have a problem with Mr. Gustus at all. I kept one lot, 1 acre of this land, and we carved it into 5 lots. This lot's owned by Stephen Anderson, Chris Valier. This is a new owner. I'm not quite sure of his last name. But I kept, as you can see, a weird line here. I do recreate. And so what I did was I kept a 20-foot right-of-way all the way along this, which is a continuous border to this property. That's why I think I'm the largest abutter. So this runs 800 feet. And then it runs westerly, probably almost 300 more, if not 4, and then another 100 back, and then it comes back again. It's an oblique shape, I'll grant you. But what I did was, I knew that I was going to expire here someday. This was not going to change. I will be the owner until I'm gone. My concern was that nobody ever change property behind me and prevent me from vacating and doing quadding and snowmobile like I've done on this land all my life. I grew up right here, so I've not moved too far. The bottom line is, the only objections, if I can even use that word, I don't think they're objections, they're concerns. You're right. I was standing right here with Mr. Valier, and right now leaves are starting to fall, and they have done some clearing. You can see through a heavily wooded area, and it is my land that would be buffering all these 2 other owners. It's not enough, mind you, gentlemen, because in the fall, that's going to go naked. Most of it will go naked. There are some large pines there, but it will be semi-visible. But it is a good distance away. So if there can be, and I'm not authorized to speak on my neighbor's behalf, but I did speak with them. If it can be done in a way that the town agrees and everything, I think both of these neighbors and myself, I honestly believe I won't see a bit of it from my spot, would like to see something more, not seasonal, but something more permanent so that they don't have to see it from there, because you can see right now that there is that daylight coming through the canopy because they have done some cutting. When I first saw the plan tonight, I had a little concern. I'm glad that the engineers had spoken to it. This is my property line. My driveway's right here. This is a watershed area, and we just had a month ago 3 inches of rain in 40 minutes. And I don't want to say it was Houston, but there was a torrent coming down that street. This is all elevated land. Everything up here is rising up. So it doesn't matter that I put houses here or that they put a solar field here. That water's coming from the sky, okay? It's still going to come through this property like it has since the last glacier. And if I put a house here and I simply direct it into the ground, into pipes, it still ends up in the DPW's jurisdiction, which is probably a very old pipe, 12 inches in diameter. And it doesn't really was not able to take that flow that came here a month ago. So it was out on the street, it was down the street. Of course, we have a lot of disturbed soils because we're in the middle of building these homes, and that will all change in the next season. So the bottom line is we had a lot of rocks in the road. We cleaned it up. We did all that. But it's a concern. We spoke with the DPW director. So one of my biggest concerns is that wherever this road goes, and I'm hoping it goes where you said, gentlemen, up this existing cart path or road over here, two reasons. One is you're right up against my property line here naturally. I wouldn't like that. I don't think it's a deal breaker, but I wouldn't like it. But when you gentlemen approved my 5-lot A&R, you told me about the scenic road condition. We mitigated and we kept alive and directed driveways and everything and stone wall replication and everything to keep that road like that. This road location right here, if it's not changed, we'll take out 2 to 3 trees, 2 to 3 of the biggest, oldest trees there. I recently paid the tree man to cut out the dead just to keep them, and they're not even mine. Bill does. He likes anything I do as long as it's to the benefit. So we clean those up. I'd hate to see them go cut down now, but if your road goes over here, we don't even have to talk any further. The other thing is, if it doesn't go over here, because it can't, for whatever reason, there is the smallest of those 3 of 6 large maples that are there now, hundreds of years old, at least 150 for some of them. But the one directly in the center is, I don't know, it's not much of a tree. For some reason, I'm sure it got planted at the same time, but it is 1/10 of the size. So if the road actually did run through the center, it would only remove 1 tree, which would be a mitigation to me. It would move the road away from my property and from my bedroom window. Not that it's a highway, it's just a road that probably once it's done, I wouldn't see a vehicle on it once a month. But the point is, it would be a better thing for me, and I'm just being selfish here and saying, as an abutter, I don't oppose the project, but if there's a better way and it works out that every comment I'm making doesn't matter because the road goes over here, great. No problem. The drainage, though, I don't know what you engineer to. I've built subdivisions in town with Ross, and I'm just down the road from the one I just moved off of. I'm not sure what you can do to alleviate that water problem, but it's there, and it's been there since the last glaciers went through, where you're into a pipe. I believe it's 12 inches in diameter. I mean, if we got rain like that again, you moving it doesn't change much, even if you put a detention basin in. I don't want to speak like an engineer, just a guy who built some subdivisions and put a lot of your engineering under the ground over the years. I don't know how you take that water and put it into pipes and then have it basically be funneled into a smaller pipe. It just doesn't work. So those are my concerns. One is, I wondered also if somebody would clarify, is the fence that goes around here, does this run right up this property line around us as well, or does it stay further away? Okay. So like I said, I have your longest continuous abutting property line, and I really don't have a problem with this project. I just think there's a few issues that maybe need to be directed. Ken spoke to them. And maybe just something that's more permanent on this side, because Chris and Steve will have that view. I certainly will not.
Can you elaborate on that? You mean something evergreen, or do you?
Yeah, it would have to be evergreen, because if you have deciduous, you're going to lose it.
Not man-made. Something
yeah, it's got to be evergreen, and I myself am going to put evergreens right between here. This line doesn't continue out like they could and show the actual definition of the 5 lots. It's showing 4, but without this line here, you lose a little bit of perspective. But the bottom line is I'm right up against Steve's driveway, and he and I are both going to grab some trees, and we're going to plant them there so that they create a natural buffer.
Can you show me on there who has the house with the white fence behind it?
That is this house. Well, again, it's not, this line here is lot 1. There's a driveway here that brings this to lot 2, and there's a lot right here.
Okay.
And that's the house that has the fence. They just put that around because they have 2 big dogs, and they like them to be free roaming, and they didn't want to be bad neighbors, I would think. And I don't know, one day it just showed up, so they did their whole yard. And then there's a narrow driveway right here that leads to this lot to Steve. And Steve, he does, his back line doesn't go so far back. And as I said, I only kept this little right of way because you never know. People change. I just moved, Somebody changes, Steve changes, I can drive right through Steve's yard, no problem. But I can't drive through somebody I don't know who has a different perspective on that. So I kept this little right of way that just, and then there was no reason to get rid of this back land. I know it can never be developed, but I kept it as a buffer from the golf course in case they did 9 holes, But as a whole, I'm not opposed to the project at all. I just see those few issues, and Ken took my thunder right from the beginning. I just wanted to be a little more specific about some of my concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I may address some of those concerns. We do have the ability to do a site visit if you need a visual. And we do have the ability to address those concerns through the buffering. So I don't know if anyone feels that's necessary, we can do it individually or as a group. There would be no deliberation, but we could request one as a group. And
Well, I definitely would like to, it's sort of, which is going to come first, the chicken or the egg, but I'd like to talk to Jack about the drainage situation, see if maybe he can meet me out there.
If I could, just to address a couple of the drainage concerns, with respect to that area, as it sits now and as it's designed, we've analyzed that. We're not making that problem any worse. We've got a detention basin through a series of functions. We're holding back some of the water, attenuating it, so we've actually got a slight decrease to that area. That may change based on the driveway location.
That's what I'm saying.
Right, so that maybe is not as much a concern unless we, in the end, come back to the original plan, which is what you see here. Ms. Stewart's comment about water coming off the hill and how we do that, just for the record, we are tasked to design up to the 100-year storm, as you're very well familiar. So we've done that, and again, we've actually improved the numbers slightly compared to the existing conditions. So 30 inches of rain that Texas is seeing is certainly not natural for this area. It's beyond any drainage system's function, so that's not something we can plan for, but we do account for the 100-year storm.
Good evening. My name is Bill Gustis. I'm from 19 Burke Street, Lunenburg, and I'm one of the owners of the golf course and this property as well. We've owned that entire area for about 5 years now. And, I think we've done a decent job of improving the golf course. One of the things that we're trying to do with this other land is to provide long-term financial security for the golf course and to make sure that it's an ongoing golf course for the foreseeable future. I mean, you've probably seen a number of golf courses that have closed in the last 10 to 20 years, and it's not our intent to do that. It's our intent to continue to operate it as a golf course. But we did that extra lot there as some sort of a resource. And, while even residential housing is allowed in that area, I wanted to try to find something that would be as unobtrusive as possible and still accomplish the goal of guaranteeing the long-term financial security of our business. We have the animals on the golf course all the time. If you've been there, there's porcupines that run around, deer, all through the land. And they'd rather take the fifth and sixth fairway to get out to the back than to go over there where these houses are. We do understand that 30, 35 acres that we will be putting this field on is a loss of habitat. But what it does is it protects the balance of the property long-term. And that on that side of the road, there's over 220 acres that includes the golf course, the vacant land to the north of the golf course, and everything north of the 30-something acres that they're going to be using here. And frankly, this project will ensure that at least for the foreseeable future, the next 20 to 30 years, there'll be no way to access that land if once we die and someone else buys the place or whatever happens. Nothing will be able to happen north of that as long as this place operates. So it's pretty much guaranteeing that there's going to be protected. The golf course, probably 170 acres on that side of the road if this goes through. We want to be good neighbors, and we'll certainly do what we can. I agreed to make the change and allow the driveway to come through our existing driveway. At first, I didn't want to do that, but understanding the zoning bylaw and the fact that there is a wetlands crossing here, it will be a somewhat of an inconvenience for us during the construction process with the trucks going in and out between the buildings to get out to the back. But as I understand it, once the facility is built, you might see a worker come through maybe once a week or a month even. We see hundreds of cars a week, so that would not be, the long-term thing is not going to be an issue for us. And if it makes things work easier for access and drainage and everything else and the way it looks, we're more than happy to make that change and allow the access through our existing driveway. Mr. Smith referenced Steve Anderson, who is the other immediate abutter right there. He actually is looking forward to this because he says now from his house he'll be able to see the golf course. That's what he told me, and he seems to be okay with it. But I get it. I mean, I did reach out to several of the neighbors in the area that I knew. I had a brief conversation with one of the people who works there in Town Hall and actually lives on New West Townsend Road to give them a heads up of what was coming and asked them if they had any questions. And I'm happy to do more of that if we need to. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a general question. I'm looking at Mass GIS. It's showing me a stagecoach road that actually connects to the property there. I don't know if it's private.
The cart path, maybe?
Alien.
Oh, I don't know.
Right, I think.
Alien Homes.
It would allow access to this portion in here.
Yeah, right.
Do you know where it is?
I do. And I don't think Mass GIS shows it accurately. It's right here.
That's to the right.
Yep.
That's it.
I don't believe, we haven't studied, you're thinking access from?
Yeah, to the central, there's a piece of this locust property that's in between two streams. And I believe they're intermittent streams, right?
They are not. The two streams that come down the hill are perennial.
Both perennial?
Yes. Okay. So our goal, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Nexamp's goal is always to try and choose sites with the least amount of impact to both the site itself and the neighborhood. We originally looked at, spreading this out, but working within, the buffer zones and 200. We kept the development outside the 200-foot riverfront area for this project. So, crossing a stream at this point for access probably, I don't know if it's on the table or not, but being riverfront and we have other means of access at this point, we probably have to look at that rather than crossing a stream.
Sure. So I guess it didn't really answer my question. Is that a private road?
I don't know the status of that road, quite honestly. There's, I think, maybe, I don't know if there's a house on it or not.
Abandoned house on it last time I was on it, which was probably 10 years ago.
Yeah, I haven't been down it. I don't.
But, yeah, we used to ATV out there like many, many years ago. But it's just.
I haven't played there in like 15 years. Is the pond basically the end of the golf course to the north? Or does it wrap right around?
No, that's the last hole, so.
Okay, so the lot is there, but the last hole stops short.
Yeah, that little pond is up.
Yeah, I see it right there on the right.
Yeah, so that's the start of one of the perennial streams from that point. But yeah, that's the end of the course right there.
Okay. Got a hole in one there.
Do you feel that moving the buffer closer to the arrays, do you have a sun and shadow diagram? How close could the trees get to the arrays without affecting their output?
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we have our designers prepare a shade analysis. We don't have it with us tonight, but basically, as designed, what you see there is the shade is just outside of the panels in this design. So if we push the tree line in, so to speak, the shade line starts to encroach on the panel. So we try to maximize the panel area we can get within the shade line provided by the tree line you see there. So a movement in the tree line would mean a subsequent reduction in the panel area to correspond. That's, if you notice on the south side, there's a lot of distance between the tree line and the panels as opposed to on the north side and the east side, and that's just a factor of the sun coming from the south predominantly in the northern hemisphere, so you see that those shade lines are longer.
Okay. And I'd just like to point out that in 4.15.4.3, under conditions, it does say that we have the ability to modification of the exterior appearance and limitation of size or extent of facilities. So
Yes.
we could request that they move panels back
Yep.
to increase the buffering if needed.
Can you give me that number one more time, please?
Again, that's something that may need to be determined.
Okay, the reference number. Give me that reference number.
41543, number 2.
Citing by special permit.
Got it. Thank you.
Honestly, what I would like to see them do is take a 200-foot offset from the property line and then cut the woods out and then see how many panels they can stick in that. That would be my
What do you mean?
preference. The 200-foot buffer,
Yeah.
they're taking an entirely forested area.
Mhm.
So it makes sense to me that that would be a great buffer. I don't understand why they're cutting trees down and leaving stumps. I mean, it's not usable by them. They can't drive over it, they can't mow it.
Because it's going to take them 20 years to grow back up.
Are you guys selling wood?
It'll provide a buffer over time, and it matches the timeline for the panels essentially, because they won't grow
So-
30 feet by the time.
So
By
once
the
they're
time
gone, once the panels are gone, nobody will be able to see them again. Because the trees have grown
Because,
back.
right.
So the whole 20 years that they're there, they're gonna be visible.
Yes.
The
which-
trees, the stumps will grow,
Yeah, they will.
especially at human height as well.
Yeah, the reason
Actually-
we mention the leaving of the stumps is just because the regrowth will happen more quickly than if they were grubbed. But the reason we do cut them is to provide a more area that's not shaded for the array.
But also, if you think about it, the older trees are going to be clear down low, and that actually will provide filler. You know, you follow what I'm saying? Like a more mature tree, the growth is all upward. Yeah?
Not on a maple or an oak.
No.
Okay. They are in my yard.
I think if you planted pine trees in there, you would get much more shading.
Sure.
You know, 50 feet deep of pine trees staggered would give you much more shading than,
I think you mean like a fir tree or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 200 feet of half a foot to 1 foot diameter trunks, and 200 feet is gonna create pretty good buffer as well.
True.
You're not gonna be able to see through those.
True.
Is a component of you guys' business unrelated to what's in front of us today? Do you guys generally make money off of cutting down trees?
this by
I don't believe so. Alan, do you have, is it pretty much built into the contractor's quote that they take the harvest of the trees? Am I right in that?
It's a site contractor who
Okay.
benefits slightly from taking the trees.
Okay.
It's not a line item for us.
Difference if we kept the trees versus letting them keep them, something, a very small amount, to be honest with you.
I don't have any more questions, but I do just want to summarize what I understand your presentation to be. So what I understand is that what you're looking to do is you're looking to clear 36 acres of land. You're looking to put up 6 megawatts, to generate 6 megawatts of solar clean energy. You're looking to put up a fence around as minimal of an area as possible around these solar plants, around the solar panels. And the impact, of course, is that at the same time, you have not communicated with any neighbors in any substantial way and made any mitigations to your plans based on their concerns. That seems clear. You also have not met the requirements of our bylaw in terms of financial sureties, as far as in my appearance, you have not, in terms of a clear plan for how you're going to decommission this. And currently, the plan for any fire hazard, any police hazard, is the taxpayers of this town. And right now, there's no current arrangement on your part to contribute to that. And you're going to basically fence in 36 acres of land. And am I incorrect in any of this so far?
I would just clarify to say that the pilot negotiation is pending, and that with regard to communication with the neighbors, other than what you heard from Mr. Gustis, that's correct, but we're certainly willing to work with them.
Okay, thank you.
And just to reiterate what Greg said, the Board of Selectmen has no knowledge of that pilot?
Have you had any communication whatsoever with the Board of Selectmen regarding the negotiation, would be my question.
When you asked if the Board of Selectmen has a representative, an outside consultant that is representing this negotiation. And Nexamp and that consultant, and I'm sorry his name escapes me, have exchanged information. So I know the negotiation is ongoing. It may not have reached the Board of Selectmen because it hasn't been completed, or a recommendation hasn't been made by one or the other. I'm not sure of that.
Okay.
Do we have...
That's probably the disconnect when I first answered you folks.
Yeah, and if you'll excuse Alan and I, it was our colleague, the VP of our development group, Chris Clark, who was interacting directly with those folks.
Yeah, I believe he presented in January, and then again at town meeting. I watched the meetings.
Yeah, I had seen a copy of the presentation. I don't have it with me, but that was Mr. Clark.
I would expect it's probably town council they're negotiating with. But I'll verify with the town manager that
We
that
gave
that
the
is
board,
ongoing.
we gave the Board of Selectmen
new
the
one or the old?
authority.
Well, but oftentimes in these sort of things, town council ultimately approves the form of it, and so the selectmen may oftentimes assign the negotiation to, and approval would come from the Board of Selectmen. So town council would look at the agreement, work through what the Board of Selectmen may have given them for guidance on what they might accept, and present the agreement back to the Board of Selectmen to have a discussion on what the final form of the agreement is. Again, I'm speculating. It's an educated guess, but, again, I'll verify with the town manager what is, if anything, is in process, and have that for the next meeting.
In my conversation with the chair of the Selectmen today, he was unaware of any proposals or documents. or
And
discussions that-
I have a question for you on that. If somehow we move forward with this, and I think where I stand on this is pretty clear, but if we go ahead and move forward on this, what is the incentive for them to, after the fact, provide any kind of remedy to the town for outsourcing all of their fire support and police support?
Precisely.
Time and time again, that happens to us.
Cart horse. So-
In what sense?
In the sense that
If they agree
have
to a
it-
pilot, they're essentially becoming a taxpayer.
correct.
What is the incentive to do that if they have a project in hand
Oh, I
with
see.
approvals? Right.
And they're not necessarily
So-
a taxpayer, they're just a donator. They've got a set amount that they donate every year, right? Isn't that
Well,
in
it's-
lieu of taxes?
Yes.
But that's spread out over even payments so if they were gonna pay personal property tax, they'd pay more upfront, and then it would depreciate over the
I mean,
25 to 30 years. So they'd pay a large amount the first year. I think after 10 or 5 years, it starts to
But I mean,
depreciate.
it's based on the depreciation value, and they present that. These are solar panels, they probably upfront are valued for a 6 megawatt DC is probably in the $20 million personal property range, and that probably drops off exponentially over the first 5 years. So we'd clean up front, but as a planning or fiscal management tool, a pilot offers a planned payment that is known over a fixed period of time. I understand what you're saying, but I don't necessarily think that them doing a pilot eliminates them as a taxpayer. What it does is it spreads the value of that project over the life of the panel, which is, I believe industry standard says 20 years. Oftentimes they can last up to 30 if they're in appropriate conditions from my understanding and from other projects I've worked on, what people have said. So I think we're maybe getting into weeds that, splitting the difference between taxes and pilot. Let's verify where the negotiations are and what's happening, and we can sort of address some of those ancillary issues at a future date if it's necessary.
Could I have Mr. Gustis just give an additional piece of detail on the pilot?
Sure.
I have spoken to Chris Clark, who is, he's the executive vice president for Nexamp, who handles that aspect of this. These are the engineers, he's the business person. And I've also spoken with Harold Scheid, the regional assessor. And it's my understanding that Mr. Clark and Mr. Scheid are working on the numbers to determine, okay, if it were taxes and it was a high and then a decline, as it has been suggested, let's get to a number that is uniform throughout the course of the 20-year lease. And, if it's fair on everybody's radar, then bring that to the Board of Selectmen, supported by their regional assessor, the town's regional assessor. This is what it should be. So I think that's where it is. I know that they've had several conversations about it at this point, and I think there have been initial positions. Whether there's an agreement, I don't know. But I'm sure there will be, because it can't really move forward without that.
And through the chair, that would be the first step, is determining what the ultimate value is and how those funds would be received by the town, or what the ultimate value of the funds received by the town was, and then finding an equitable distribution over whatever fixed period.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the question is, how do they find themselves in planning board with an application if the first step is to put the pilot together that nobody's started talking
Well,
about?
that isn't the first step.
I thought you just said that was.
No, the first step of the pilot is identifying the value.
Okay.
The two are parallel tracks that are, as I understand it, and without, having full discussion with town council, are not linked, and in general can't be linked for a variety of different legal purposes.
Correct. And it would seem that way, again, at the very beginning or earlier in the conversation, I think I stated what would be impressive would be a more, complete community outreach program, a much more complete commitment to the community before turning an axe on the taxpayers to subsidize what, while you're in the process of making millions, the taxpayers subsidize your work. And so it certainly would seem a lot more impressive had it, as Matt suggested, gone a different route, but that's unfortunately not what's in front of us today. And it doesn't seem as if, we could tie those things together. They seem very, what's in front of us is whether or not this meets our bylaws. And that seems to me to be a separate conversation. It's just really unfortunate that we're kind of in a position where we're expected to move along in a process and come up with a decision without any commitment in writing whatsoever from you guys for this project. It is wholly on the taxpayers of this town right now. And that's just what it is.
So if I could summarize my thoughts, I'd like to get that information. I'd like to know from Unitil where we stand.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see some illustrations, at least on some of the, from a couple of residents on either street that are close, to see what they're going to be seeing. That would be nice to see. And what was the other thing?
Decommissioning plan.
Yeah, the decommissioning.
Correct surety.
Right. And some decision made on the driveway. See what's going to happen with that.
Community outreach, mitigate some of this stuff for the people, who unfortunately are kind of flat land. 200 feet is nothing, but when you start beyond that, it's not the same impact as of Northfield Road. As the gentleman spoke, he has a pretty comfortable buffer over there, but if he had basically a stream or a marshland, it would be nothing. I'm sure if it was just flat, am I incorrect on this? That if it was just flat land and then this starts, he would probably have a very different tone tonight, more similar to the other residents that are here. It's just, I think I've said enough.
Could I just ask what the board's, as far as what would be a satisfactory level of documentation for the surety, specific documentation that you would approve
Something
of?
that's funded now, not in 11 years. That's one.
Okay.
Do we have access to the solar advisor?
The what?
The solar advisor.
The solar advisor.
Consultant to the
The
Board of Selectmen.
consultant, yeah, we.
Well, it sounds as if their business vice president is speaking with the assessor to determine value. I'm assuming that's the advisor, would be the assessor, is looking at the personal property values, and they're working on values, tax brackets, and what that looks like for both the life cycle model and for a pilot model.
We do have a solar advisor, though, correct?
I was.
Is that right?
John, we use him through the, he was actually, I believe, the one that initiated this.
John Londa?
No. John Londa knows who he is. We brings him up all the time at Green Communities Task Force. But we received grant funds, I'm not sure how.
So can we
as a
find out whether
solar
we do
advisor.
have a solar advisor,
He
and if we
might be able
can?
to provide some clarification and insight to us, and answer some of these questions if he's.
And if it's from grant funds, my inference would be that it's a solar advisor for the town's installation of projects, because recently the town has undertaken several rooftop installations, and that advisor is in all likelihood working as a design and installation consultant for the town. I could be completely off base, but it would stand to reason that they're not a solar guru for the town to access on any solar related matter, but I'll inquire as to what the parameters of it is and what they can offer.
Cool.
Okay.
And then another cost to the townspeople that I haven't heard mentioned yet is that these 3 properties, potentially, maybe 4, comprise the entirety of our recreation district.
Recreation, yep.
That is correct.
And I don't think there's anything recreatable about a solar field. And as you said, it does cut off access to the northerly portions of this lot. And we've already experienced that there's a difficult time recreating outside of the recreation area.
The bylaw does allow it, though, in these circumstances, where they do have the acreage. So it is a trade-off. It's something for us to consider, but I think you have to weigh it, in terms of, it's by, I believe it's by right?
No, it's.
I mean, sorry,
special
it's
permit.
special permit. Yeah, of course it is. So we do have to weigh that, but I think it's I think it's of less concern.
Through the chair, I want to go back to the decommissioning and the surety, and I want to, I guess, understand, and I understand why one would want to have access to the full value immediately, but I also want to introduce to the table, similar to, it's sort of, this is kind of the opposite of a subdivision, where the full value of the bond is to complete installation of utilities should someone fail to do so in whatever way. This bond or surety or whatever it happens to be is to remove the facility in the instance that it needs to be removed. Again, I want to just have a full understanding of, this is a project someone's sinking tens of millions of dollars to install. Having the fiduciary ability to remove the project within, issuance of the permit. I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be, because oftentimes what's going to happen is the removal of these projects come at either some sort of natural disaster or a change in technology or a life cycle failure of the project. The panels deteriorate after 25 years, and Nexamp's like, on to the next thing, or Nexamp is gone. And, not that we want you guys to go anywhere, or not that you're going to walk away, but then we have the value to be able to go back and say, okay, well, now we have this, decaying rack system with these, glass and silicone panels on them. How do we get rid of it and restore that land? Oh, well, now we have this pool of money. And in what you're asking for, the ability, the full value up front, the planning board has the ability to approve the form per the bylaw. Most, and most times, people aren't going to walk in with a cash surety at that point. What you're going to end up with is either some sort of tri-party agreement where they have a mortgage or some other funding, and we're assigning an additional pool of money within that mortgage that we have access to that they can't get rid of until we've signed off on it, or they're going out and purchasing what amounts to a removal bond or an insurance policy. In both of those instances, the claiming of those funds in the event that the town chooses to pursue such is costly and timely. It often requires a number of court dates and attorney's fees, and often can take years and years, if not longer. So I don't think that there necessarily needs to be a decision this evening. I would encourage the board to sort of ponder that, review what they're proposing within their agreement, to look at the way that they're proposing to fund it. The time frame that they're proposing to fund it is probably at the 30% of actual life cycle, as opposed to what the prescribed life cycle is, and perhaps they have a better plan. Perhaps they can come up with a different scheme that may more satisfy what some of the concerns have brought forth for. I would just encourage that we be open-minded about what form and what time frame we're looking at, and not push for something that on its face satisfies the immediacy of our desire, but may have greater costs down the line. And again, it's not to say that either is good, bad, or indifferent. Just there's a lot of baggage to both options, and it's important that the board consider that as they move forward.
Thank you for offering that. I think my concern, with this is, just very strictly just the letter of what their requirements are to provide to us as decided at town meeting. And I don't believe that I have any discretion as a member of this board to say what you've submitted as a rough estimate of what other things cost adequately meets what our requirements are, because it's very clear to me that it does not. And then if you're going to have a surety, as our bylaws require, it should be based upon that researched document, not based upon what other people have done in other areas and a general rough estimate. And the other concern, I think, with the surety is, I agree with you, is that, I wholeheartedly support the idea that you're looking at something, 10 years down the line, and it makes sense that you'd be putting this on something at a much decreased value. But I think, as you alluded to, but what happens if this winter or next spring something does, or whenever it is, in a year or two, we do get that crazy storm, and things do get damaged? I think our bylaws say that we're supposed to get a surety from them, and I think it should be funded in a much more reasonable time period than 10 years, 11 years from now.
And
I don't think there's any other area of essentially surety that in daily life for the taxpayers of this town in which they can delay 10 years. So,
and through the chair, I don't disagree with you about maybe having a more hard and empirical number for what the removal costs would be. I would differ on you on the time frame for funding it. And again, that I'm only here to give advice and provide you with what may happen in either way. As far as, and again, I don't certainly want to speak for Nextamp, but in my experience, people who operate facilities that are damaged, that are producing, a fiduciary benefit for them, oftentimes don't remove them and don't walk away. They have some form of insurance policy for repair and are very quick to ensure that, their downtime is as short as possible. But again, the board has the ability to make their conditions per. And, you know, I think what's important to note is 415, 412, the financial surety portion, doesn't prescribe any form or timeframe for funding. It says that is acceptable to the board.
Right.
So the board can, in their wisdom, find what they think is appropriate and reasonable within the circumstances. That's not to say you have to find that 10 years is acceptable, but it's also not to say that everything needs to show up as part of the original permit.
Correct. I would like for them to just, follow the rules that everyone else has to follow. You get a house, you have house insurance, and you don't fund it in 10 years. You fund it right away.
Build it in a floodplain, you gotta have flood insurance.
Yep.
Correct.
Oh. Okay.
Any more comments from the board?
I think that's what I'm looking for. That was my last summary, I think, was mine.
Do you want to give a brief overview of what we are requesting from the applicant to the next meeting, or?
I don't know that I can be brief.
How about an elongated, in-depth, descriptive soliloquy of?
So,
Oh, sorry. Should we hear from Jeff?
That's up to you guys.
Would anybody like to hear from our review engineer?
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff.
Thanks for waiting this out with us.
You're welcome. You're
It's
welcome.
on the clock. It's
Good, no, good evening, everybody. For the record, my name is Jeff Walsh. I'm with Graves Engineering, your peer review consultant. I don't mind sitting there and being quiet. I'm all ears and eyes. And no, I don't want to get up and because I'm paid, I got to say, hey, my name is. I just wanted to tell you, you've got my letter. We don't need to talk to what many of the issues we discussed this evening. With respect to surety, I can help this board to some extent on estimating the dollar value. We are civil engineers. We're not electrical consultants. We're not electrical designers. Nor are we well aware of the value of scrap 20 years from now. However, that said, we work for a number of communities, a tremendous number of communities. We're actually starting to put together a little bit of a database of the empirical cost because we see so many different communities, and some of which engage us for helping with the surety, some of which say, thanks, we got it. So there's a number of firms we've worked with that have been the applicants. Nexamp, of course, is one of them. But what I can tell you is that I'd be glad to look at what was submitted, and there was a document submitted with respect to surety value. I'll just leave you with this. I mean, things that I look for. I can look at the civil side better. Okay, how much disturbance would I expect removing the whole racking system, the underground wires? Typically, they want to leave the conduits behind. And dollar value associated with that. I can look at the value of labor when they look at it in today's rates. We're quite aware of what even a laborer would be earning on the prevailing wages, and want to see if they have the dollar value in line with that. And lastly, inflation. If it's calculated in 2017 dollars, and we want to know what is the cost going to be escalated to or inflated to in 10 years out or 20 years out, I want to make sure that's accounted for. In this particular application, they wanted to start adding inflation at year 11. And I've seen many of other applications that calculated it in 2017 dollars instead started applying the escalation factor or the inflation factor on year one. To me, that's more appropriate. But again, I just want to let you know that to some extent, we can help you, and we can only help you with looking at that specific, how many square yards of disturbance, how many racking systems are being removed and so forth, but also, use some of our experience with the empirical side as well. So I don't want to bore you with any of the other technical issues. Be glad to answer any of the questions you might have while I'm here, but, basically, what I can tell you is that from a civil engineering perspective, having seen a number of different solar projects, there was a lot of thought that went into this. The layout, the grading, the drainage system. I can see that the engineering was well thought out as it was put together. I had some comments in there about water velocities at discharges. I had comments in there about the wetland crossing, which has already been discussed this evening. But what I have is not what I feel make or break for the project and can be overcome. But I do want you to understand that when I receive a solar project, and all I can find is a few dashed lines going up 30% grades for an access road, and stormwater basins that just have circles, and here's the basin. I mean, that to me is a preliminary plan application at best for even a site plan, and that's not what you have before you here. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Greg. If you know, Jeff, I'm sorry. The 35 acres of clearing, when it goes from thick woods to open area?
Yep.
What is the increase typically? Percentage?
It varies with the type of soil cover. This is a sea soil, if I remember correctly. Your tighter glacial tills. It might have been a B. I didn't spend a lot of time with the detail. One of our staff engineers did. I looked at the bigger picture. A soil, sands and gravels. I specifically worked on one just a few weeks ago. No change in the modeling. However, when you get B's, C's, especially the sea soil, there is more of a change. I don't remember specifically what it is. I certainly can provide you that information. It's got to do with the runoff curve number, and again, for A soils, they don't change. So when they had 10 acres of woods, 10 acres of solar project, 2 of which were going to be cleared from woods to a meadow, it made no change, even the 2 acres, because the curve number didn't change. And the grading didn't change. They were basically, the time of concentration was over the same type of material, more or less.
But a hill that's mostly ledge, what would you presume?
I'd still have to go with what the soils are mapped as, which would be A, B, C, or D soils.
We get that.
It's in the stormwater report. It's unlikely that the hill is D soils, because those are usually your wetland soils. They're very hardly pervious soil, close to impervious soils. You see wetlands mapped as D. The tills are typically a B or a C. I'm suspecting this is probably a C. And you don't want to get into trying to figure out how many square feet of ledge to try to get the effect of rainfall. You're just cutting it into precision that just isn't there in the mathematical model. So if it's mapped as C soils or B soils or part B, part C, depending on the location, that's what we go with. And again, that information was submitted in the hydrology report. Sorry, I can't recite it off the top of my head.
Thank you.
Okay.
What are we paying for?
There's a lot of projects I have to remember, guys.
Last week there was, our last meeting, there was a question that came up from Ecofibers. And so I just had a quick question. How long does it normally take from the time that you get an application to the time you're able to get us a response? What's your typical turnaround?
I'd like to try to turn them around in 2 weeks, but the first submittal might be closer to 3.
Okay.
And then in the last few weeks, we throw in vacations and everything goes upside down.
Of course.
But normally, for follow-up reviews, I like to try to turn them around even quicker when I can, usually within 2 weeks.
Okay.
A big subdivision, we might have to take a little bit longer, maybe closer to 4 weeks. But again, that's a big subdivision. None of the projects I've worked with you guys so far, we've seen one of those. Okay.
Well, thank you very
Great,
much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my long detailed drone of what you guys are looking for next meeting. From the applicant, it seems that you're looking for a harder, more empirical number on the cost of removal, maybe to be reviewed or buttressed by what Jeff comes up with from what they've submitted. Either an improved or alternate proposal for the provision of surety that doesn't take 10 years, or maybe it sounds like at least some of the board is uncomfortable with that time frame for funding. I don't know if the board wants to take a vote, if the board wants to just instruct the applicant to identify several options, and the board can choose from those options. Again, I don't want to speak for the board. I'm just running through that being one of the things. A proposal for maybe beefing up the buffering along the southerly property line, possibly along the westerly property line, eliminating the ability to see the project from Northfield Road, if you can't already.
Sorry to interrupt that. Do we want to request any kind of renderings or sight lines from any of the...
At this point? I hadn't got there yet.
Okay, sorry. I just thought that would substantiate the buffering.
Additional community engagement, potentially addressing the direct abutting neighbors and either in whole or individually or as a group, and potentially some visual simulations from either selected points or selected residences or participating residences. I think we may have at least one volunteer in the crowd tonight who may be willing to allow them to access their property to create photo simulations.
Yeah, I
Can I
think,
amend that just slightly to visually abutting residents as opposed to directly abutting residents?
Sure.
Because many of the residents are partitioned by a strip of land, and they don't actually abut it.
mhm.
Sure.
I think it'd go a long way in
I think
allaying
well, I
fears
think it
as
would
well
allay a
from-
lot of the both public and board fears.
Yeah.
And then I guess when we step back from that, you guys are looking for some stuff from me. You're looking for information from the fire chief on either foam tanker or training to disperse foam. You're looking for information on the pilot, who is negotiating it, and at what point it may hit the Board of Selectmen. You're looking for information from Unitil on interconnection and the impact on other interconnections, and the connection between the pilot and the special permit from town council.
Yes.
I miss anything?
Yeah, I was, the.
The solar
grid issue.
advisor.
Well,
The grid issue identified. That's the
and what
Unitil interconnection and.
That not only it will support
Correct,
their
that's
project, that it won't.
community-wide.
And infrastructure, I would guess. If more houses tie in, the
Well,
lines, the.
I don't think that's a project-specific issue. I think
believe the
depend.
capacity on the
Capacity
lines,
is,
yeah, the
sure it is.
transmission lines.
They're going to put 6 megawatts into the system that we've already
Well,
had problems with.
They're being required to upgrade facilities in order to handle the amount of flow that they're installing.
On their
Right.
line, right?
Let me finish my point before everyone interrupts me, because we're not going to get to my point. There is a cost associated with their introduction of energy to the system. They're paying the cost for that. There are times where on other roads in other parts of town, or maybe further down Northfield Road, the lines are also not adequate for the interconnection of a private solar, whether it's 6 megawatts or 12 kW on a roof, and the applicant of that project is required to pay for the upgrade of the line. So what I would say that the max that this board could look at is that the lines that they're installing from their project are not prohibiting additional interconnection along that line. But beyond that line or elsewhere in town,
Correct.
individual projects can be and likely will be required to do necessary upgrades to support the load that they are installing. Now, one could also infer or take the tact that if these lines are inadequate and this project is being required to upgrade the lines for their interconnection, then should they be required to over-design and over-install the lines, or should they install the lines that they're required to install? Because if any one of you were to install a home solar and your neighbor said, well, gee, I'm thinking I might do that in 6 or 8 months, can you just build lines that'll hold my capacity? Your answer would be,
Right.
that's going to do whatever to my cost. So I will do what the board wishes, but
I think
it would seem to me we're looking more at the global circuit issue as opposed to the transmission from site issue. And maybe the grander transmission over the trunk lines as opposed to the local feeder lines.
I think what we're asking is what is going to be the impact on the greater community of this proposal as it stands?
I also have a feeling that Unitil's answer will be, I don't know.
Well,
Well, then how do we establish that it doesn't?
Well, then let's get a letter that says that.
Let's
get there.
When you ask a question that's nebulous like that, the general answer is, I don't know. This is what it will. This is what we know it will do, and that's why I'm trying to dial in what specific issue we're trying to identify, so that, you know, because and I'll tell you, because I get calls from people that say, "What can I do on this property?" Well, what do you want to do?
Community interconnection. The last two that went in had an impact, according to Unitil, on the ability of others in town
Yes.
to interconnect.
So that's specifically the question, which is,
What is the impact of this going to be on the next person? Sorry, that wasn't a no.
on the next person who wants to. So
Keep it civil, Dave.
Yeah.
We're talking about the circuit issue.
Yes, please.
Okay. And that's what I understood you to be asking, but
I
it
just
seemed to
wanna make
expand
sure
from there.
This project isn't gonna hurt the residents.
Right.
Or add additional burden to them.
And the final thing is the
Thank you for
solar
that
advisor.
clarification.
Do we have
Additional
one, and does
burden.
this board
Yeah.
have access?
And, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to talk to him personally. I don't think he needs to come before the board, but I have questions that, depending on his expertise, he might be able to answer and help.
The other thing was the driveway, but I'm sure they're going to be working on that. They have.
Well, they've already noted that they have an alternate proposal that they're preparing, correct? So you're not really asking for that, they offered it.
My favorite pen.
I know this is probably a little challenging, but thank you guys. I know it's a little preliminary, but thank you very much for coming. I support solar. I also support responsible members of the community and businesses that seem to want to contribute more than they take away. But I do want to thank you guys though for taking the time to put this together, and I look forward to the next meeting with the updates.
I would like to address the public that did show up. We do have the ability to meet with you. My contact, my home phone number, and my email is on the website. I'd be happy to come out and talk to you or walk your property or whatever you need, so.
Now, we'll need a motion to continue, and I guess we would look to the applicant to identify, they clearly have a little bit of work to do, and, you know, what they feel is a reasonable time frame to turn around their resubmission or their supplemental information, with the understanding that it's due at 4 o'clock Tuesday prior to the meeting. And
And the September 12th is not eligible date.
No, I would say you're going to go September 11th, September 25, or then we're into late October, because October 9th will be a holiday.
So September 25th?
Yeah.
25th?
Yes.
It's up to you. It's up to you. Okay.
So I move we continue the meeting to September 25th at 6:30 PM.
Second.
Any discussion? Sure. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Moving on. What's that? Minutes?
Someone said we're going home. Is that what I heard?
No.
Mr. Chair? Can I request, though, that we do table the director's items for definitions and use table to a future meeting, given the hour and the remaining agenda?
I second that.
How about till Wednesday?
Well, you guys
That
can
should
talk
be a
about it on
short-
Wednesday, but I won't be there Wednesday.
Yeah.
Be a short meeting.
Thank you as well for taking the time to come out tonight.
Oh, and the agenda's already been posted.
Okay. If it's the will of the board, I will agree under protest. How's that?
Aye.
Aye.
Well, it is your job to hold the meetings to a reasonable amount of time.
Well, we weren't rehashing anything, so at least give me a little credit. Okay, minutes approval.
Oh.
I'll step up.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
That'd be great. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so. Continue. Michael Ray, get his number, call him later.
Said he had he just had one question, he said. Oh.
All right.
We took off the easel?
Do we want to?
Owen?
We'll just move on with that.
What happened?
Kittens.
Michael Ray, we're in open meeting, sir. Sorry. All right. Minutes approval.
Sorry about
The
that.
minutes from 8/14/2017. Does anybody have any edits?
No.
The
You do a great job on these.
I do
Marjorie.
actually have one edit that's probably going to be moot at this point, but under the meeting schedule, it's got the 994 Northfield Road public hearing under the September 11th, so I think you inadvertently moved it down instead of putting it next to it.
Good catch.
Sorry, it just says, so if somebody were tomorrow to look at, they may think it's the 11th. And then, just in regards to the voting, I owe an apology to the board, and in particular Ken. I didn't realize that he had abstained, and I did not ask if there was any people opposed, so
Actually,
I just wanted to be cognizant of that, so.
so that was in the public hearing minutes.
Oh, sorry.
Which we haven't got to yet. Because
Okay.
I had the same comment.
At least I identified it. So the minutes from, actually, do you have a set I can sign?
That the
The ones we just.
the 8/14 meeting?
This, yeah,
That's this right here.
okay. Just can use your pen, sorry. I pencil. I mess up a lot. So then the minutes from 8/14 to 675 Reservoir Road. Does anybody have any comments or questions regarding that? Ken?
Nope, not on 675 Reservoir Road.
Okay.
Mine was on 40 Pioneer Drive.
Okay. And then the minutes from 40 Pioneer Drive.
Yeah, I had two comments on that one.
Sure.
The first one was Town of Lunenburg is missing a T.
Where? It's, oh.
It says Aun of Lunenburg. Or Own of
Initially,
Lunenburg.
yeah,
If you subpronounce the T. And then, I was listed as abstaining. First of all, I didn't know it was a roll call vote. But my vote was not to abstain, it was to nay that vote.
Okay.
But you just said all approved. Well, we just said approved, and they said yay, and yay, and I didn't say anything. He never said
Never
any
came
opposed.
back.
I did not ask.
I understood him to be a no, though.
Yeah, so.
I hope it wasn't viewed as that my ego was that nobody could disagree with me. So.
Of course it was.
I was cognizant of it, and I do want to apologize to Ken, because
You can just mark it, you can cross out the abstain and mark nay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to request.
Sure.
You saw what I did to that pen earlier, right, Greg?
That was aggressive.
All right, there you go, sorry.
Those are the only inputs I had on minutes.
All right. Committee reports.
I will note that you do need to be wrapped by 10:29, so.
Capital Planning did meet August 15th. It was a brief meeting to go over a lot of the items that were just getting buttoned up from the previous year. We are looking to get the information out earlier so that all the town departments can get their requests in earlier and we can have more time to review those. And our next meeting is September 5th at 5:30 in Town Hall.
Are you actually reviewing those items?
Pardon me?
Are you actually reviewing those items with them?
Well, that we give them the paperwork, they submit their requests, and then we
Oh, so
I think we allow them to prioritize them, and then we look at them.
so you haven't got them back yet, the list?
Oh, we haven't even sent them out yet.
Oh,
Usually,
okay.
we're starting this is just a preliminary meeting. I think we start the process more in October, but they are looking to get it computerized so that they don't have to rewrite the form over every
Sure.
year. We can just send it out and it can be revised. School Building Committee, we have not met, and there's no update. And Green Communities Task Force, we have not met, and there is no update.
Stormwater Task Force, we met last Thursday, and we did not have we had quorum. We did not have a full, we're actually absent one member, so Stormwater Task Force is looking for a member. We're down by one. We had 3 show up, and our consultant, Ed Himlin from DCI, came in a little unexpectedly, but a little bit not. Anyways, we had more discussion about the notice and the applications and how to present it to the Board of Selectmen. It was timing, scheduling, when to do what. So we're still kind of up in the air. We did get that 1-year stay from the EPA on the filing of our items because of the lawsuits from various states. And AgCom met the Thursday before last, I think, and there was discussion about the Stillman Country Fair coming up on September 9th. There is also an event going on between the Lunenburg Farmers Market and the Historical Society, which was planned for late September, and I believe it's been pushed back to early October. I will inform everybody of the date. And the farmers market continues on. We're still doing fairly strong. The early season manager retired, didn't want to do management anymore. And at the last meeting, my wife, Heather Bowen, was unanimously appointed the market manager in training. So she and Maureen are working together to improve the market any way we can. So that's it for my committee reports.
So MJGC, the next meeting is September 13th. I have previously indicated I would not be available for that meeting. Currently, I will be available for that meeting because of my injury. I'm not traveling those 2 weeks now.
MRPC, no update. Next meeting is coming up. It should be the first week of September. And open space, nothing has been called.
Charter Review Committee, that's right. We have our first meeting, I believe it's on next Wednesday night. And I'll certainly give you guys some updates as we move forward with that.
Where is that meeting?
Where?
Yeah.
I have to look it up. in the
Okay, I can look
emails.
at the agenda.
Okay.
All right, director's item, 675 Reservoir Road.
Okay, I need you to all sign your life away.
We can do that.
We got one here, I think.
Marjorie's going to let you use her Main
Thank
Street
you.
bank pen.
That's usually the ones I have. School's
You gotta go back to 110 Grill.
School's starting, we're thinning out the herd by putting them in the kids' bags.
Adam, while we sign this, I have a question for you. I was looking over Ken's, and this is coming up, I was looking over Ken's comments, and I think I'm a pretty computer savvy person, but I do not, for the life of me, I cannot replicate what Ken does. I got pretty close to it, but I couldn't. Would I be able to meet with you at some point and just,
Sure, I'll have to play around with it. I mean, if you want, I can send Word versions out. I tend
What are
to...
you using,
I'm
Google
all
Docs?
Apple.
You're all Apple.
Yeah.
I got no help for you there.
Using Google Docs?
I use Word,
Use Word. Oh.
but Word runs on Apple.
Yeah, okay.
I was going to say, I can send out Word docs. I'm generally squirrely about doing that because I don't want anybody actually changing the document. I'm happy. I like the bubble comments on the side. I think that's the most helpful. And that way I can track my changes in the document and I can just compile everybody's bubbles on the side.
I'm going to be there tomorrow anyway. Can I swing in maybe about 11:30 tomorrow?
We have access.
No. I'll be out on a site visit from 10 on, so I can't guarantee I'll be back in at 11:30.
Okay.
But if I'm in, I'm happy to sit down with you.
Okay, or the afternoon, maybe
Sure,
one-ish.
yeah.
Okay.
Do we have access to the IT director? Something like that?
Yeah, if you can find him.
I
He does
It
both.
doesn't
He does-
sound like he's looking for.
I think he's just a machine.
Months of computer lessons.
Well, he
Which
does.
I would need. so.
He does do town and school. It's a function under review. There's a comment. It looks like a little sticky note. You click it and you highlight something, click it, and it pops it up, and you just populate it.
That's headed back.
So
Thank you.
Steve,
I'll sit with you, it'll be
Yeah.
quick. I'm pretty sad.
It's pretty
Steve
easy.
Malandrinos is the IT director, and you can email him through our email,
Okay.
just to see if he can set up a time, or if he can give you some instruction, or just point you in the right direction.
If you just want to know how to drop comments in, I can show you.
How they get the email.
No.
Alrighty, moving on.
All right, this is an update only, not for discussion, nothing more than information.
Yes.
O'Brien Homes is everybody's favorite long-standing lawsuit. There are two cases, as many of you are aware. There's O'Brien 1, which is we have 10 subdivisions, the town denied us, we think that they should have approved us. And there's O'Brien 2, which is a litigation of an enforcement action by the town on preparation of subdivision ways without benefit of approval. O'Brien 1, the 10 subdivision case, was heard in January of 2016, and we are awaiting a decision. So that case has been tried, and it's sitting on a judge's desk somewhere waiting for him or his law clerk to actually write the decision. O'Brien 2, which I believe you all have a meeting day after tomorrow about, is scheduled to be litigated in September. I think it's 6th. Yes. Yeah, September 6th. I think it's 6 and 7 that it's scheduled to be litigated. And that is being handled by KP, as they had prepared all of the depositions, pre-trial docs. They put together their strategies, and it was really just at this point going through the trial motions. So that's an update. This was all prepared prior to the calling of Wednesday's meeting, so I expect you all will get further information on Wednesday. I have my suspicions on what that is, but in open session I won't share.
And just a reminder, it's at the Ritter Building, not here, because the CONSCOM meets here, so.
And I will say that have no fear that you're going to have to testify. If you were, you would have been depositioned, told by now, unless you're a last-minute subpoena from the plaintiff. But
Do they have the ability to subpoena former members that are
Yes.
actually named?
I believe they do. Because they would, well,
They were the ones
I mean,
that made
the
the
members sitting on the
decisions,
board
so-
now would have very little to offer if they weren't on the board at the time. It would be based on people who were on the board at the time and, what sort of went through. But that's really neither here nor there.
Alrighty, definitions and use table, we've already addressed till the next meeting, not any longer than that. Notices and communications, the 2030 Massachusetts Avenue, Chapter 61B, recreational land.
So this came through, I think the third time it's come through. The first two were not complete submissions, so they never made it anywhere.
I'm going to say, this is the first time I saw it.
Well, it's because it's the first time it's actually looked like it was correct.
Okay.
It was really, we sent it along to you just so you have it to start looking at. The Board of Selectmen has not acted on it and has not asked for a recommendation. They will at some point, and what's happened often previously is we get the request from the Board of Selectmen, and that's the first time we see it, so we take a meeting to do it. Now you have it in your hand, you can start sort of poring over it, seeing if you think there's any planning value to the retention of this land, and the retention of this land being the town ponying up the money to assess it and then pay whatever the assessed value is. And then we'll forward a recommendation onto the board at their request, and it will move forward from there.
Do we have the authority to go look at it like we usually do, or is that not?
As long as you're on the street.
Okay, so there's no...
Come see me, I'll show you where the trails are.
All right.
Yeah, I was saying, there's a trail that runs right alongside of it that runs up to the
Seems-
apple orchard.
Well, I know, but with our applications, we always get a letter stating...
So it seems as though the Open Space Committee would want to look at this as well.
They'll get together.
Okay,
to-
all right.
Couple of years.
As they have previously.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting piece of property because it doesn't directly abut conservation land, but through another piece of land it does abut conservation land. So if that piece of land, AKA the orchards, ever got subdivided and partitioned, a transference of a piece of that to conservation would make that whole block out there around Fairbanks Gift be a lot of nice conservation land, and there's good trails on there.
Right, so that's Fairbanks.
Well, it's sent out to them for an opinion as well.
And so, yeah, they'll get their bite at the apple,
Okay.
so to speak.
And this, right, and this is the piece I'm talking about, is the apple orchard.
Yep.
So if he subdivided this and this piece was granted, then all of this would become a large conservation block with frontage on Mass Ave, which would be,
And water down to there.
and what?
And water, public water down to there.
Right, yeah, which would be, that would be a nice.
We'll
piece of-
revisit this, correct?
Yeah.
Moving on. Meeting schedule. September 11th, we had requested the permit review of 5 and 9 Electric Avenue. Ken had asked the question whether we even had the ability to review 9 Electric Avenue, and I did bring that up to Adam.
And I think what happened was that just got pulled in because they've been using 9. There's no permit on 9, so there's nothing to review.
And just that and then the other thing is, we're not reviewing the CONSCOM permit or the ZBA, but it would be helpful information to see if any of their decisions reflect what's on our plans. And then just in regards to that, 9 Electric Avenue, I know we don't have the ability to review that, but we do have the ability to reiterate our letter to the zoning commissioner, I believe.
Oh, the property owner is well aware of the stance.
Aside from the safety issues, one of my concerns is that the abutters are being denied their due process because an application was submitted, they did come to the public hearing, they voiced concerns about the impacts that were impacting them then and that are still impacting them, and now they do not have the ability to address that, or we don't have the ability to address those concerns either, so.
I spoke to the property owner today, and she's been assured, and she has assured me that they would be filing their application prior to September 11th, but that will remain to be seen.
Anyways, I don't think any of the information we received would probably be helpful anyways in that application as well, so. September 12th, we have a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen on economic development, which will be televised. They did make a point to televise that workshop. September 25th, we have the continuation of 944 Northfield Road. Do we have any other applications that have come in?
Not at this time.
Alrighty, is there any public comment from the public? Ongoing items, complete streets, I think we're just waiting to see if and when some of those things will be accomplished along with the pavement management plan. And any board comments or concerns? We have 6 minutes.
I went to the farmer's market with my family, had a great time. I stopped in at Elena's, picked up a nice gift basket from my new neighbor. It's all good down there. I was going to go to, what is it called, Fireflies? No.
Yes.
Fireflies. Dragonflies, something like that.
They're not open on the weekend yet.
Right. So that was unfortunate because it was very vibrant and seems to me it would have been a great opportunity to do some, outreach to the people who were there already. So
I think she's still ramping up. I don't know that she has hard opened yet.
Yeah.
But
Great to
it's
get
well worth it.
that cross
Yeah.
traffic though, if she can get it.
It's well worth the trip over there.
Yeah. I'm still gonna make it over there at some point.
I'll be very brief. I spoke with Greg earlier today. Next meeting, I want to try to present to you guys basically an outline for how we can try to integrate what we do, get a little bit more involvement from the students here in town. Basically, it's, looking for your permission to allow me to go to the school committee to ask if I can, go into the schools. I don't have kids. I know we got limited time. We'll talk more about this next week. But that's the general idea.
Well,
Or tomorrow, outreach. And the second thing is, I know as the newest member of the board, there's no doubt that I, tonight, have extended our time. So I will make a point to review this meeting online and make, self-reflect and find ways in which I can shorten the amount of time that I'm talking, so we can get out of here quicker. Okay, you guys? So.
thank you.
Yeah, you've just been dragging us all out.
All righty, that's
Second.
it. Okay.
I'm sorry. I thought you said.
All right, Ed.
No, I thought you said.
No, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
It's moved and seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.